Chapter 1384. Yan Jiuxiu had yet to arrive, but his surging divine might had already caused Tian Chen, Laozu, and the others to be greatly shocked. Lu Ping took a step forward and stood in front of everyone, completely ignoring Yan Jiuxiu's divine might. Good ability. No wonder some people call Lu Xiaoyu the number one of the 3 generations in the cultivation world. You really do live up to your reputation. Lu Ping suddenly smiled. Senior's divine might is something this junior can't match. A meteor suddenly streaked across the sky from the depths of Scarlet Mist Island, smashing straight towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping's expression changed slightly. He turned around and said something to Tianqing, Laozu, and the others who were several tens of feet behind him. Tianqing, Laozu, looked hesitant, but he was grabbed by Tianqing Laozu, who turned around and led the others back into the depths of the land of fire poison, disappearing in an instant. Just as Tianqing Laozu and the others had left, the meteor suddenly fell from the sky. Amidst the loud explosion, the pure Yang Divine Sense clone in front of Lu Ping revealed a trace of a vicious smile before it was shattered by the powerful shockwave brought about by the falling meteor. Just like how a meteor would cause underground water to gush out when it crashed into the ground, what erupted from the ground this time was a boundless sea of magma. A gigantic fire luan, surrounded by warm pure Yang energy, flew up and down in the sea of fire. The boundless sea of fire also rose and fell, followed closely by a huge wave of fire that surged towards Lu Ping. After Tianqing Laozu and the others retreated, Lu Ping let out a temporary sigh of relief. However, when he saw Yan Jiuxiu stirring up such a huge commotion in the valley to deal with him, Lu Ping could not help but laugh involuntarily, feeling rather overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. Of course, this was not the time to be lamenting about such things. This thought merely flashed through his mind for a moment. As the boundless sea of fire whistled towards Lu Ping from all directions, the scorching ground beneath Lu Ping's feet suddenly began to emit a thick white mist. Following that, the white mist grew thinner and a strange gurgling sound could be heard from beneath his feet. Lu Ping's figure immediately rose higher, only to see that a pool of water had unknowingly formed under his feet. As his figure rose higher, the water's surface also rose higher and higher, expanding continuously. Very soon, he collided with the sea of fire. Amidst the crackling sounds, a large circle of white mist rose from the point of contact. In this dry and scorching environment, there was an inexplicable trace of dampness, causing one to feel even more stifling. The sea of fire's waves of flames rushed towards Lu Ping from all directions, while the pool of water beneath Lu Ping's feet expanded from the center. The moment the two sides came into contact, the sea of fire's impact gained the upper hand, instantly compressing the expanding pool of water towards the center. However, at this moment, the auspicious clouds behind Lu Ping flourished, and a distant roar came from within the auspicious clouds. Lu Ping's Dharma Wyrm, supported by the auspicious clouds, circled above Lu Ping's head. Every time it circled a circle, the pool of water beneath its feet would expand. The Dharma Wyrm circled 18 times above Lu Ping's head. The size of the pool of water not only pushed the sea of fire's waves back to the point where the two sides met, but also surged on the surface of the water to attack the surrounding waves of fire. The Dharma Wyrm's counterattack stance was extremely strong. If someone could take the risk to fly above the flaming valley where the two were fighting, they would be able to clearly see that the valley had been divided into 2 distinct parts. Most of the valley was occupied by the orange-red sea of magma, while on the east side of the valley, there was a steaming blue lake. Surrounded by the sea of magma, it was still standing firm, competing with the sea of magma for the right to occupy the valley. That's right, it was indeed a fight, and not completely suppressed by the sea of fire. In the sky above the flaming valley, one could clearly see the contact between the two sides. The sea of fire surged with tongues of fire, but the lake also surged with waves of water. Every wave of water and tongue of flame contained the true essence and will of the user. Every time the two sides collided, it was in fact a direct confrontation between two people. Therefore, every wave of water and tongue of flame would explode with a momentum like a landslide. The entire valley was filled with surging white mist, and even the original red mist was polluted by white water vapor. After the layers of flame were cooled by the lake water, they turned into gray rocks that blocked the expansion of the lake water. However, this was only Scarlet Mist Island after all, an area densely packed with volcanoes, a paradise for fire attribute cultivators. Lu Ping's counterattack seemed strong, but in reality, he was forced to use offense as defense. In this confrontation between the two sides, Lu Ping had already fallen into a disadvantageous position. Even so, this was enough to shock Yan Jiuxiao. Even though he had already placed Lu Tianping in a high enough position, and even regarded him as another Xiao Baiyu, the scene before him was still something he had never expected. Although Xiao Baiyu being able to kill Lu Taiqing back then was enough to shock the world, it was also because of a trick. In Yan Jiuxiao's opinion, even if this Lu Tianping was able to contend against him, in a direct confrontation where there was no room for tricks, it would be good if Lu Tianping could at most escape. What's more, they were currently on Scarlet Mist Island, and the Fire Phoenix clan had the geographical advantage in the volcanic region. On the contrary, they were at a complete disadvantage against this Lu Tianping. Under such circumstances, Yan Jiuxiao believed that it was not impossible for him to take advantage of the situation and kill this rising star. In reality, this was the reason why he had calculated that it would definitely be Lu Tianping when he found out that a Junling cultivator had snuck into the central region of Scarlet Mist Island. Although it hadn't been long since Yan Jiuxiao had advanced to the pure yang stage, he was still extremely conceited. He knew that in his current situation, including the geographical advantage, he was far stronger than Lu Taiqing from several hundred years ago. However, everything that had happened in reality was truly difficult for him to accept. That Lu Tianping was actually able to hold his ground under his frenzied attacks despite being at a complete disadvantage. On the other hand, he had the advantage of cultivation and geographical advantage, and in the end, he seemed to have the upper hand. However, how could he not feel the undercurrent hidden beneath the surface of Lu Ping's lake? How could it be like this? Could it be that this Lu Tianping was even stronger than Xiao Baiyu from back then? The phoenix avatar that was patrolling in the sea of fire stretched its neck high, and flapped its wings continuously within the sea of fire. With every flap, the sea of magma would rise by a foot. It flapped its wings 9 times, and the 9 feet of flame tongues completely suppressed Lu Ping's blue waves. Thick fog rose once more, and the waves beneath Lu Ping's feet began to shrink once more. Moreover, the speed at which it was shrinking was extremely fast, as if Lu Tianping's perseverance had suddenly collapsed all of a sudden. In reality, at this moment, Lu Ping, who was hovering above the lake, seemed to be at his wits' end. The avatar behind him was also rapidly retracting. However, Yan Jiuxiao's angry snort suddenly came from within the sea of fire, and he seemed to be extremely angry. Then, above the lake, Lu Ping's body suddenly shattered and collapsed, turning into a puddle of water that splashed into the lake beneath his feet. A long laugh came from the only exit of the valley, which was the land of fire poison. The Fire Phoenix clan leader's divine might truly surpasses the heavens, and Lu Tianping is no match for you. I will definitely seek your guidance another day. The waves of magma seemed to echo Yan Jiuxiao's current mood, and in an instant they engulfed the puddle of lake water with a roar, instantly turning the entire valley into a veritable lake of magma. The Phoenix avatar soared into the sky like a fairy of fire, and a scarlet cloud of auspicious mist wrapped around its body. After that, it landed behind a red-robed old man at the edge of the valley and disappeared. The old man stared at the place where Lu Ping had disappeared, his expression fluctuating uncertainly. In the end, he let out a long sigh, and his expression quickly regained its calm. Several streaks of light descended from behind the old man. The person in the lead called out, "Grandfather," while the others bowed and said, "Greetings, clan leader!" The cultivator in the lead was none other than the flame spirit coffin. After seeing that the valley in front of him had completely turned into a lake of magma, a hint of joy flashed across the flame spirit coffin's face, and he said excitedly, "Grandfather, did you turn that Lu Tianping into ashes in the magma lake?" The flame spirit coffin didn't look at his grandfather's current expression, and only listen to the magma lake that filled the entire valley. He said excitedly, "What North Sea water sword immortal? A poor family from a remote and desolate place actually dares to take the title of number one in the third generation." Exactly! Several cultivators of the Fire Phoenix clan who came with the Flame Spirit Coffin clamored. The Flame Spirit Coffin also became more and more complacent. "And that Jinling actually wants to promote to a large sect and ascend to the heavens in a single bound. This time, it's best that Lu Tianping dies. Without Lu Tianping, Jinling is naturally just a chicken and a dog in front of grandfather. As long as we smash their treasure ship, which force in the North Sea dares to fight against our Fire Phoenix clan?" The more the Flame Spirit Coffin spoke, the more excited he became. He completely didn't see the increasingly ugly expression of his grandfather in front of him. He was still dreaming. "At that time, we only need to take the opportunity to occupy this Scarlet Mist Island and establish a second dojo for our clan. Then, we will obtain the treasures left by Luan Daoist on Scarlet Mist Island and establish the foundation of our clan for eternity. In the future, we will not be inferior to the Green Sea Snake and the Peacock Royalty. Grandfather will definitely transform into a true spirit and travel beyond the heavens, becoming an existence like the seventh patriarch. Enough!" Yan Jiuxiao's stern shout first caused the Flame Spirit Coffin to panic. Then, he was stunned. He didn't know why Yan Jiuxiao was so angry, but the prestige that Yan Jiuxiao had accumulated over the years as the clan leader caused the cultivators of the Fire Phoenix clan behind him to keep quiet out of fear. Yan Jiuxiao let out a long sigh, suppressing the anger that was provoked by his grandson once more. Then, he slowly said, "That Lu Tianping didn't die. He retreated." "Yes, he escaped." "Ah?" It wasn't just the Flame Spirit Coffin. The other cultivators of the Fire Phoenix clan were also astonished. However, none of them would have thought that the Flame Spirit Coffin would act so presumptuously in front of Yan Jiuxiao. This time, the Flame Spirit Coffin finally remembered to observe people's expressions. When he saw that his earlier exclamation had caused Yan Jiuxiao's expression to darken, he hurriedly corrected himself and said, "This fellow is really quick to react. I'm afraid that he retreated without a fight after witnessing grandfather's overwhelming might." The people behind him all chimed in. However, Yan Jiuxiao let out a long sigh and said, "Although this person isn't a match for the old man, he still has the ability to escape unscathed. Retreating without a fight? You've underestimated him." Yan Jiuxiao turned around and looked at the Flame Spirit Coffin, who had a look of disbelief on his face, with a hint of disappointment in his heart. He slowly said, "Coffin, if you see this Lu Tianping in the future, you must not clash with him. Even if you've also advanced to the late Dharma stage, you must still give in to him. Sai, the North Sea is about to produce a Xiao by you." As soon as he finished speaking, the magma lake in front of him gathered into a sea of flames. Yan Jiuxiao stepped onto it and turned around to leave. At the same time, he continued to instruct, "Tell the people outside the island not to get too entangled with the sects of the North Sea. The old man has already found the exact location of the Luan Daoist's inheritance. We must do everything in our power to obtain the Luan Daoist's inheritance before the sects of the North Sea do. Once we're done, we must all return to the East Sea." Yan Jiuxiao had already risen into the air. However, not only did the Flame Spirit Coffin and the other Fire Phoenix clan cultivators not follow him, they looked as if they had lost their parents. Yan Jiuxiao's heart sank. An ominous premonition rose in his heart. He said angrily, "What happened?" The clansmen looked at each other, but no one dared to say anything. In the end, it was the Flame Spirit Coffin who said miserably, "Grandfather, I'm afraid the cultivators outside the island have already fought with the sects of the North Sea." "What? What happened? Who gave the order? Did the sects of the North Sea provoke them?" The Flame Spirit Coffin was burning with anxiety. Seeing that his grandfather was enraged, the Flame Spirit Coffin did not dare to say anything else. The Flame Spirit Coffin immediately flew into a rage. "Speak! What exactly happened?" Seeing that he could not hide, the Flame Spirit Coffin said in a low voice, When grandfather fought with that Lu Tianping, I was certain that grandfather would win. As he said this, the flame spirit coffin sneaked a glance at his grandfather. He saw that Yan Jiuxiu was surrounded by flames, but his eyes were staring at him with a cold light. The flame spirit coffin's heart skipped a beat, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. However, he did not dare to stop talking. He could only bite the bullet and say, "At this time, there was news from outside the island that Jinling had suddenly sent reinforcements. Another mid-Dharma adept and 3 early Dharma adepts rushed over as reinforcements. I felt that since grandfather had already dealt with that Lu Tianping, a battle with Jinling was probably inevitable. Thus, I sent a teleportation talisman to 5th grandfather to send people to stop the Jinling adepts. Before I came here, I had already received news that out of the 4 Dharma adepts of Jinling, 1 was dead, 1 was seriously injured, and the last one was lightly injured. They were later rescued by a treasure ship. Now, 5th grandfather has already led people to fight with Jinling." Before the flame spirit coffin could finish speaking, a cold wind had already slapped him in the face. The flame spirit coffin instinctively wanted to dodge, but how could he possibly dodge? With a crisp slap, the furious Yan Jiuxiao's slap landed squarely on the flame spirit coffin's face, which was filled with astonishment. "You can't do anything right, but you're good at spoiling things. You almost ruined my plans." Yan Jiuxiao's light flashed, and he had already turned into a shooting star once again, flying in the direction from which he had come. However, his angry voice lingered as he said, "What are you still standing there for? The few of you, go out of the island to support 5th brother and the others. Flame spirit coffin, get your ass over here." Several cultivators of the fire phoenix race hurriedly turned into streaks of light and left. The flame spirit coffin, who had been muddle-headed from Yan Jiuxiao's slap, quivered, and the muddle-headed expression on his face suddenly changed to one of joy. He hurriedly summoned a stream of lava and turned into a streak of light as he chased after Yan Jiuxiao. Lu Ping retreated all the way to the center of the poisonous fire land, and saw Tianqin Laozu and the others pacing back and forth with anxious expressions on their faces. When they saw Lu Ping's return, they were immediately overjoyed. Tianqin Laozu asked anxiously, "How are you? You're not injured, are you?" Lu Ping smiled and shook his head. Astonishment flashed across the crowd's faces. After all, the earth-shaking and mountain-shaking commotion in the valley was truly worrying. But now that Lu Ping was able to escape unscathed, the crowd was also amazed by Lu Ping's current cultivation base. Lu Ping's cultivation base was also very high. Only Lu Qiner giggled heartlessly and said, "I knew Big Brother would be fine. Big Brother is the best." Tianqin Laozu was the calmest of them all. She quickly snatched a jade slip from Tianqin Laozu's hand, who was still immersed in the shock of Lu Ping's battle against a pure yang cultivator. She threw it to Lu Ping and said, "The sect has just sent news that the Fire Phoenix race ambushed our sect's cultivators who were rushing to reinforce us. Junior brother Tianxin has fallen. Martial Uncle Xiang Lu was severely injured in order to protect our sect's disciples. Xian Er and Tian Xian also suffered some light injuries, but they weren't too serious." When the treasured ships arrived, both sides had already started fighting. "What?" Lu Ping couldn't believe his ears at all. He asked again, "Martial Uncle Tianxin has fallen?" A trace of grief flashed across Tianqin Laozu's eyes, but she still managed to restrain herself and said, "That's right, junior brother Tianxin died in order to protect martial nephew Tianxian. That's why 6 or 7 of the 20 core forging disciples who accompanied him died." Boom! The aura around Lu Ping's body could no longer be restrained. Tian Cheng and Tianqin Laozu, who were beside him, were completely unable to resist the aura that Lu Ping had released in his rage. Each and every one of them couldn't help but retreat. The shock in their hearts deepened. Only now did they deeply understand where Lu Ping's confidence to contend against Yan Jiuxiao came from. What a great Fire Phoenix race, what a great Yan Jiuxiao. Ha ha. Lu Ping was so angry that he started laughing. The aura around his body was like a great wave that spread outwards one after another. Tianqin Laozu did her best to restrain the pressure that the enraged Lu Ping had brought to everyone. She calmly said, "Martial nephew Lu, calm down. Right now, we need to rush to the center of Scarlet Mist Island as soon as possible. You are our sect's fully deserving #1 combat power. You need to return and attack the Fire Phoenix race as soon as possible." Tianqin Laozu's words quickly made Lu Ping realize that now wasn't the time to be angry. His boundless aura immediately calmed down. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Only then did they realize that their backs were already drenched in cold sweat. Even Tianqin Laozu's gaze towards Lu Ping had a trace of reverence in it. Under the full force of Lu Ping's aura, everyone felt as if they had encountered Yan Jiuxiu before. Tianqin Laozu saw that Lu Ping had calmed down, but was still standing there without moving. She couldn't help but feel a little anxious. She anxiously said, "Martial nephew Lu." Lu Ping suddenly raised his head and looked at the crowd. He said, "Martial uncles, please lead your men to reinforce our sect first. This disciple still needs to stay here." Tianqin Laozu immediately said anxiously, "How can we do that? Without you, our sect's strength will suffer a great loss." Lu Ping interrupted Tianqin Laozu and said, "Martial uncle, there's no need to say anything more. This disciple is staying here to keep Yan Jiuxiu busy. Without the pure yang restraining him, the two great cultivators of the Fire Phoenix race won't be able to do anything in the North Sea." Chapter 1385. Tianxin's death was the second time Jinling had lost a Dharma adept after Tian Fan and Tian Tian had fallen in the battle at Jiuxuan Tower. Currently, Jinling was making use of Mara's calamity to expand its power. Many of the plans and schemes involved Lu Ping's personal involvement. Now that they were at the juncture of becoming a large sect, every Dharma adept was an important part of Jinling's battle strength. Now that one of them had fallen so easily, how could Lu Ping not be filled with grief and rage? Lu Ping actually wanted to go directly to Yan Jiuxiu. This decision caused Tianqin and Tianqing to turn pale with fright, and they rejected it without hesitation. Although Lu Ping had managed to escape unscathed from his encounter with Yan Jiuxiu, and although the two of them knew that Lu Ping was powerful and had many trump cards, they did not think that such a thing would happen again and again. After all, that was the pure Yang Laozu. "Nephew Lu, this is not the time to be angry. Only our sect's treasured ship is the right way to go against Yan Jiuxiu. That's right, the Fire Phoenix clan is powerful. Although our sect now has the power of a large sect, our foundation is still shallow. Now that the Fire Phoenix clan has provoked us, we can only defend with our lives. I believe that with the treasured ship here, the Fire Phoenix clan will not take the risk of killing 1,000 enemies and injuring 800 of their own to fight against our sect." The rest of the crowd also started to urge Lu Ping not to take the risk. Even Lu Qiner, who had the most confidence in Lu Ping, looked at Lu Ping worriedly. Lu Ping slightly furrowed his brows. Ever since the Jinling treasured ship's trial voyage, the Jinling era had indeed been greatly boosted. However, it had been overly reliant on treasured ships. It should be known that in this world, the cultivator's own strength still mattered. Treasured ships were indeed powerful, but they were still external objects, after all. Although they were known to be able to contend against pure Yangs, they still had many inconveniences. If a pure Yangs were to engage in a battle of attrition with a treasured ship, the treasured ship would most likely be at a disadvantage in the end. It seemed that after this matter, it was necessary to redefine the role of the treasured ship. Although this treasured ship had been repaired, it might not be much stronger than the treasured ship of Fei Ling sect, but it was still destroyed and sunk to the bottom of the sea. However, Lu Ping still acted as if nothing had happened and explained, "Don't worry, martial uncles. Since this disciple dared to look for that Yan Jiuxiu, I naturally have some confidence. Moreover, it's really strange for Yan Jiuxiu to suddenly enter the center of Scarlet Mist Island. Perhaps it's related to the secret of the Fire Phoenix clan's invasion of Scarlet Mist Island, so this disciple must make this trip. Moreover, as long as this disciple can delay Yan Jiuxiao, Marshal Uncle Jiang and the others will naturally have a greater chance of success in the sea region outside the island. Before Tianqin Laozu could say anything, Lu Ping spoke first. Marshal Uncle, this time, this disciple will need to use the heaven creation relic in Marshal Uncle's hands. Tianqin Laozu hesitated for a moment, then passed the feather to Lu Ping and said, "Feel free to take it. Although this feather is an extraordinary treasure, to me, it's more important that it contains the will of the Wan Taoist. It's just that this item seems to only be used to its greatest effect by adepts of the Phoenix bloodline." Marshal Nephew Lu Ping smiled and said, "Don't worry, Marshal Uncle. After this matter is over, the treasure will definitely be returned to me in good condition." The Fire Phoenix clan had never imagined that Jinling's counterattack would come so quickly and decisively. Just as the Flame Spirit Coffin had used the name of the clan leader to order an attack on Jinling's reinforcements, killing an early Dharma adept on the spot and severely injuring the mid-Dharma adept who was leading the attack, Jinling's treasured ship, which had come to support them, had decisively counterattacked and forced the Fire Phoenix clan adepts to retreat. Fortunately, the Fire Phoenix clan adepts who had been chasing after the Jinling adepts had not acted rashly. Seeing that Jinling's treasured ship had come to support them, they had immediately chosen to retreat. Even so, they had been severely injured by the treasured ship's fierce counterattack. Fortunately, they had reacted quickly, and none of them had died. However, when Jinling had received such grievous news, Jiang Tianlin was not going to let it go. The treasured ship had been activated at full speed to chase after the Fire Phoenix clan, and they had gone straight into the waters that the Fire Phoenix clan currently controlled. The conflict between the two sides erupted on the spot. Under the leadership of a red-faced great practitioner, the Fire Phoenix clan gathered 3 mid-Dharma adepts and 7 early Dharma adepts. They led more than 100 core forging adepts from the Fire Phoenix clan and began to attack the Jinling sect's ship. After Yan Jiuxiu had left, the Fire Phoenix clan adepts had been left to the tall, long-necked great adept to take charge. When he realized that Jinling's treasured ship had suddenly come to attack them, he had sensed that something was wrong. Even though the red-faced great adept had strongly advocated taking advantage of the opportunity to surround and destroy Jinling's treasured ship, he had still insisted on leaving more than half of his forces to guard against the other sects in the North Sea. Since he had already taken the initiative to ambush Jinling's cultivator, he might as well draw all the cultivators of the North Sea here. This way, no one would pay attention to the center of Scarlet Mist Island, and the clan leader could take this opportunity to sneak into the location of the treasure without anyone noticing. However, there was no lack of wise and far-sighted cultivators among the North Sea cultivators. When they saw that Yan Jiuxiu had not appeared, they would naturally be able to roughly guess the Fire Phoenix clan's intentions. This was also why Yan Jiuxing had dragged everyone into the chaotic battle the moment the various sects of the North Sea appeared. Right now, Yan Jiuxing could only hope that Yan Jiuxiu would be able to obtain the treasure as soon as possible. Even though he understood that compared to the treasure hidden within Scarlet Mist Island, the Fire Phoenix clan would still be willing to pay a great price. If the clan leader could return as soon as possible, it would reduce the number of casualties among the Fire Phoenix clan's disciples. However, Yan Jiuxing's brows quickly furrowed. This was because while the Fire Phoenix clan and the various sects of the North Sea were fighting, Jinling's treasured ship had already turned around and quietly retreated. Speaking of which, this time, the Fire Phoenix clan and the various sects of the North Sea had truly witnessed the power of a treasured ship. After all, the legends about treasured ships in the overseas cultivation world were naturally miraculous. However, ever since Fei Ling's sect was annihilated 4,000 years ago, most of the cultivators in the North Sea had never seen the power of a treasured ship with their own eyes. Although all the sects in the North Sea had seen the real treasured ship during the trial voyage of Jinling sect's treasured ship, this was the first time they had seen the full power of the treasured ship. According to what the Fire Phoenix clan and the various sects of the North Sea knew, other than Jiang Tianlin, the Jinling sect cultivators on the ship, there were only 4 early Dharma adepts of the 3rd generation and 3 adepts who had just arrived. Among them, the only mid-Dharma adept had been severely injured and had lost his ability to fight. Other than that, there were only about 100 Jinling sect disciples on the ship. But it was this kind of power, after controlling the treasured ship, that was able to hold their own against the attacks of more than 10 Dharma adepts and more than 100 core forging disciples. They could even advance and retreat as they pleased. This Jinling actually wanted to retreat at this time. This was a good idea. He wanted to allow the Fire Phoenix clan's practitioners to fight with the various sects of the North Sea so that he could reap the benefits. Yan Jiuxing watched as Jinling's treasured ship slowly retreated from the Fire Phoenix clan's camp. Although he understood Jinling's intentions, the Fire Phoenix clan felt rather helpless at this time. Yan Jui had already led more than 10 Dharma adepts to try their best to stop the treasured ship, but they were still unable to do anything to it. Perhaps only when the clan leader made a move would this treasured ship be afraid of them. At this time, Yan Jiuxing was not the only one who had seen through Jinling's intentions. Many of the Dharma adepts of the various sects of the North Sea were also cursing and swearing. But at this time, they were engaged in a fierce battle with the Fire Phoenix clan. Even if they wanted to retreat now, they could not be as calm and at ease as Jinling. However, in reality, the North Sea adepts were only cursing and swearing in their hearts. In reality, Jinling's treasured ship had already attracted a small portion of the Fire Phoenix clan's forces. Even if they were to retreat now, there were still 8 or 9 Dharma adepts of the Fire Phoenix clan who were not willing to give up. In this chaotic battle between the various sects of the North Sea and the Fire Phoenix clan, the various sects really could not say much about Jinling's contribution. Yan Jui's originally crimson face became even redder. He did not believe that this was the case, but now that he was facing the treasured ship, he finally understood how troublesome this ship was. Attacks aside, Jinling's treasured ship was obviously lacking in manpower. Most of the time, it was the Fire Phoenix clan's cultivators who were surrounding and attacking it. But when it came to defense, these hundreds of Fire Phoenix clan cultivators had been attacking the treasured ship for half a day, but they could not even break through the protective shield of the treasured ship. This made Yan Jui involuntarily think of Ba Gui of the South Sea. Wasn't this treasured ship in front of him a tortoise? It was not that Jinling's treasured ship was that sturdy, but the few Dharma adepts on the ship were able to easily block the attacks of the few Fire Phoenix clan cultivators who posed the greatest threat to the ship. Without the attacks of these few strongest cultivators, Jinling's treasured ship was naturally impregnable. A great tribulation spirit treasure in Yan Jui's hand transformed into a ball of orange flame, which then transformed into a 300 feet long fiery saber in midair. The saber then let out a shrill howl as it slashed down towards the defensive barrier of the treasure ship. However, before this flaming blade could land, Yan Jui's eyelids twitched violently. It was this pair of early Dharma adepts again. He did not know how many times they had joined forces to block an attack from a great adept like him. Yan Jui could clearly sense the level of practice of this pair of early Dharma adepts on Jinling's treasured ship. They were just ordinary early Dharma adepts, but these two had practiced a secret combination attack technique. Before Yan Jui came to the North Sea, he had heard of this secret technique before. It was said that it was one of Jinling's greatest secret techniques, and it could allow a husband and wife who were of similar levels of practice to completely increase their abilities to a whole new level, giving them the ability to challenge opponents of a higher level. This pair of early Dharma adepts could barely be considered half-swordsmen, but when the two of them joined forces, they had the ability to go up against a mid-Dharma adept. Originally, this was nothing in Yan Jui's eyes, but when Jiang Tianlin was steering the treasured ship with all his might, these two became the main attackers of the Jinling Dharma adepts on the treasured ship. Furthermore, with the support of the various formations on the treasured ship, this pair of early Dharma adepts' secret combination attack technique, which was originally enough to go up against a mid-Dharma adept, was upgraded to the next level, and they actually had the ability to go up against a great adept like Yan Jui. Indeed, just as the flaming blade that Yan Jui had unleashed was about to land on the treasured ship's protective shield, 2 flying swords rose from the treasured ship at the same time. Under the combination of the 2 swords, they formed a flowing river of swords that surged up into the sky, heading straight for the flaming blade. This river of swords contained the dual attributes of metal and water, and they complemented each other. With the full support of the treasured ship, it collided with the flaming blade that was descending from midair. The river of swords was instantly split into two in midair, but the flames on the blade were also extinguished by the impact of the river of swords. When the blade of swords landed on the treasured ship's protective shield, it only caused the shield to tremble slightly, and did not cause any actual damage. On the treasured ship, Zhong Jian and Ma Yu heaved a long sigh of relief. The two of them looked at each other, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They had lost count of how many times they had joined forces to fend off the attacks of this great adept of the Fire Phoenix race. Zhong Jian and Ma Yu had both reached the early Dharma stage a few years ago. They were the rare couple in Jinling who were able to inherit the secret combined attack of Tian Fan and Tian Shui Laozu. Their individual cultivation could only be considered outstanding among the third-generation disciples of Jinling. Compared to Tian Yong, Tian Feng, and the rest who were also third-generation disciples, there was still a gap. If not for the fact that the two of them had inherited the secret combined attack of Jinling and had received a lot of training from the sect, the two of them would probably still be at the peak of the core forging stage. They would not be able to compare to the true geniuses of Jinling's third-generation disciples, like Tian Yong and Tian Feng. However, now that they had truly advanced to the Dharma stage, the secret combined attack of Jinling's secret combined attack finally showed its true power. With the two of them working together, they could be said to be invincible among cultivators of the same level as them in Jinling. Even when facing mid-Dharma adepts, although the two of them were at a disadvantage, they were still able to ensure that they would not be defeated, or at least be able to escape unscathed. Of course, this achievement of facing mid-Dharma adepts was not just for Lu Tianping, Yin Tianchu, and the rest. After that, the two of them were selected by the sect to board the treasured ship and began to adapt to everything on the ship. They began to be trained to be an important fighting force for Jinling's treasured ship. However, the two of them did not expect that before the treasured ship had even set sail for Central Plains, the two of them would have achieved the impressive achievement of facing off against a late Dharma adept. Although they knew that the main reason why they were able to fight against this Fire Phoenix race adept was because of the full support of the treasured ship's seal, Jiang Tianlin had to use all his strength to steer the treasured ship. Xiang Lu Laozu was seriously injured and had lost his ability to fight. Tian Feng, Tian Chang, Tian Xian, and the rest of the early Dharma adepts might be able to defeat them in a one-on-one fight, but in order to defend against this great Dharma adept's attack on the treasured ship, the two of them had to work together. It was also because of the two of them working together to defend against the great Dharma adept that Jiang Tianlin was able to save a lot of inner yuan and experience when steering the treasured ship. They were able to advance and retreat freely from the encirclement of the Fire Phoenix race. However, the Fire Phoenix race was a top-tier demon clan after all. A 9-leaf flame great Dharma adept was an extremely powerful existence. Zhong Jian and Ma Yu were able to do this together, but they were now exhausted. However, the great Dharma adept outside was still very much alive. Fortunately, at this time, Jiang Tianlin had already steered the treasured ship out of the Fire Phoenix race's encirclement. Many of the Fire Phoenix race adepts who were attacking the treasured ship also began to return to the encirclement to support the main clan members who were fighting with the various sects of the North Sea. However, 9-leaf flame great Dharma was still somewhat unwilling to give up. He naturally knew of Yan Jiuxiao's plan. Although he had always been rash, he was not without reason. At this time, Jinling was probably already suspicious of Yan Jiuxiao's absence. If he allowed Jinling's treasured ship to return, then Jinling would definitely receive more powerful reinforcements. At that time, only the clan leader would be left alone in the central region of Scarlet Mist Island. At this time, it would be best if he could delay Jinling's people for a while. However, 9-leaf flame great Dharma's plan was ultimately going to fail. He could already tell that the pair of early Dharma adepts of Jinling's minor repairs were probably at the end of their tether. However, Just as he was about to muster his remaining courage to attack the treasured ship again, a mid-Dharma adept behind him suddenly cried out in pain. Nine-leaf flame Great Dharma's divine consciousness swept out in an instant, but he only caught a glimpse of a figure a few hundred feet away in a flash. When Nine-leaf flame Great Dharma turned to look, he saw that the back of the adept's heart was bleeding profusely. Although he was still alive, it was obvious that his core space had been severely damaged. Even if his cultivation was not destroyed, it would probably be greatly damaged. What an insidious sneak attack! Who? Nine-leaf flame Great Dharma roared angrily, his divine consciousness spreading out in all directions. However, it was blocked by the treasured ship's barrier. Immediately after, he heard another cry of pain. It was the head of an early Dharma adept who had been on the other side of the treasured ship, flying high into the air. This time, he was deader than dead. Nine-leaf flame Great Dharma roared angrily. He could not care less about the turbulence in the space around him due to the chaotic battle around him. He directly used his spatial magic to land in front of the fallen Fire Phoenix adept. However, he just happened to see the barrier of Junling's treasured ship ripple, and a young adept dressed in black with a cold expression appeared on the bow of the ship. He turned around and looked coldly at Nine-leaf flame Great Dharma. Chapter 1386. In the blink of an eye, one of the Fire Phoenix Dharma adepts was dead and one was injured. This kind of loss was enough to drive Yen Nine-leaf crazy. He glared at the black-robed, cold-faced adept at the bow of the ship and yelled, "Brat, do you have the guts to leave your name behind?" The young cultivator's indifferent eyes didn't have the slightest emotion. He turned around and left the bow of the ship. He went straight to a formation plate on the ship and replaced the exhausted Zhong Jian and Ma Yu. Yin Tianchu, a mid-Dharma adept, was the second most powerful adept among the 3 generations of Junling adepts. With him replacing Zhong Jian and Ma Yu, and with the help of Jiang Tianlin Zirei, Yin Tianchu was completely confident that he could face off against a late Dharma adept. Yen Nine-leaf was at a disadvantage, and no longer dared to surround the Fire Phoenix clan adepts in a semicircle. Instead, they gathered within a few hundred feet of him so that they could take care of each other at any time. However, this way, the Junling adepts who were guarding the ship could also concentrate on defending the side of the ship that was under attack. On the other side, Yan Jiuxing was extremely anxious when he saw that Yen Nine-leaf had his eyes fixed on Junling Sect's treasured ship. He knew that this clan brother of his was the most stubborn of all. Although the battle between Junling Sect and the North Sea cultivators seemed to be on par with each other, the truth was that the North Sea cultivators still had the upper hand in terms of numbers. If Yen Nine-leaf and the others did not return to defend, the Fire Phoenix clan would still suffer a loss. But Yen Nine-leaf did not care about this. As long as the Fire Phoenix clan was not completely at a disadvantage, he would definitely not return. Just as Yan Jiuxing was thinking of a way to summon Yen Nine-leaf back, 6 streaks of light suddenly descended from the sky. This time, not only Yan Jiuxing, but even Yen Nine-leaf's heart skipped a beat. The newcomers were definitely not from the Fire Phoenix clan, so they could only be North Sea adepts. The 6 streaks of light were heading towards the ship. They were Junling's Dharma adepts. With 6 Dharma adepts and Junling's ship, the North Sea adepts had an overwhelming advantage. Without another word, Yen Nine-leaf's feet flashed as he tried to go around the ship to block the incoming enemies. However, before his escape light could bypass the treasure ship, a blade light that tore through space had already slashed in front of him. Yen Nine-leaf was forced to place both his hands before his chest to support himself. Next, a curtain of fire spread out, and the barely discernible blade light was utterly devoured by the curtain of fire. However, Yen Nine-leaf's attempt to stop the Junling cultivator from entering the treasure ship failed. After that, she sent her to Fei Ling Mountain to condense her Dharma idol with the help of the spiritual vein at the top of the mountain. Fortunately, when she was training in seclusion at the top of Fei Ling Mountain, she happened to meet her 9th senior brother who had also come to Fei Ling Mountain to undergo his second thunder tribulation. Although she had been training in seclusion for the past few years, she knew that her ninth senior brother was now an important figure in the sect. If he spoke in the sect, even his teacher, her mother, head Jinling, would have to consider it carefully, so she begged Lu Ping for help. Since it was his teacher who wanted little junior sister to stay in seclusion, although Lu Ping could guess the reason for his teacher's decision, he had to respect his teacher's will first. Although he did not directly take little junior sister out of Fei Ling Island, he agreed to plead for her with his teacher. For this reason, not long after Lu Ping passed the Thunder Tribulation, he secretly returned to Tianling Mountain to plead for little junior sister before his cultivation stabilized. After a secret discussion between the teacher and disciple, Jiang Tianxian really allowed him to return to Tianling Mountain without training in seclusion. Xianer! Hearing this, Jiang Tianxian turned around and saw Jiang Tianlin smiling at her at the door of the cabin. Father! Jiang Tianxian immediately forgot the strange feeling she had just had and jumped toward Jiang Tianlin. Jiang Tianlin's smiling gaze left his daughter in front of him for a moment. Then, he chuckled as he listened to his daughter, who was like a lark, complain about her boring cultivation life all these years by his ear. However, this was obviously not the time for the father and daughter to catch up. Seeing Tianqing Laozu walk over, Jiang Tianlin laughed and interrupted his daughter's complaints. He said, All right, you are now a Dharma adept. If the 4th or 5th generation disciples of our sect saw you, they would have to call you Laozu. But look at you, you look like you have not grown up yet. You don't have the aura of a Dharma adept at all. Ancestor Tianqing laughed and said, What do you mean by the temperament of a Dharma ancestor? What kind of temperament does a Dharma ancestor have? Martial niece, don't listen to your father's nonsense. It's this appearance that makes me feel that I'm not old. Jiang Tianxian obediently called him Uncle Master. She knew that Tianqing Laozu had something to say to her father, so she found an excuse to turn around and leave. However, after leaving, Jiang Tianxian subconsciously glanced at the place where Tianqing Laozu had been standing before, only to realize that Tianqing Laozu had already left. Looks like it is not only our sect that has become stronger over the years. Other than a few old guys from the other sects, there are many new faces in today's battle. Tianqing Laozu said as he looked at the North Sea sects and Fire Phoenix adepts who were still fighting in the distance. The ship had already turned to leave. After Tianqing Laozu and the others boarded the ship, no matter how stubborn Yan Nineleaf was, he knew that there was no way to stop the ship now. He could also see that Jinling wanted to leave, and it was obvious that he wanted both the Fire Phoenix and the North Sea sects to suffer. However, the current situation was that the North Sea sects and the Fire Phoenix clan were fighting each other. Even if they wanted to separate, it would not be possible to do so in a short period of time. On the other hand, Jinling could move freely on the ship. Even if they could see through Jinling's intentions, they could not stop him. Jiang Tianlin smiled faintly and said, This is to be expected. The North Sea has been relatively peaceful these past few years, and it is a good time for us to recuperate. Although our sect has gained the most from the large cultivation resource distribution centers like Frost Island and Scarlet Fog Island, the other sects have also shared a lot of the benefits. It is normal to have these new Dharma adepts. However, we still have to see how many things each sect has hidden. The North Sea sects also want to take this opportunity to show off their strength to our sect. This is also a warning to our sect that even if we become a large sect, we still have to take them seriously. Tianqing Laozu laughed and said, Oh, so they have also realized that our sect's ascension is unstoppable. Isn't this a disguised form of weakness? Jiang Tianlin nodded, but he still said with some worry, There is no need to fear internal problems, only external ones. Tianqing Laozu's expression also became much more serious. He then said, Disciple Lu is still in the central area. It looks like he is going to stop Yan Jiuxia. After we return to the station, should senior brother go and help him? Jiang Tianlin thought about it and said, No problem, let's make sufficient preparations first. Tianqing Laozu hesitated for a moment and said, Senior brother, are you sure that disciple Lu can fight against a pure Yang adept? Jiang Tianlin sighed and said. Before he entered the late Dharma stage, although this brat was strong, I could more or less sense the limits of his strength. However, after leaving Fei Ling Island, even I can't see how strong he is. Although Yan Jiuxiu has the geographical advantage in the central area of Scarlet Fog Island, don't forget that the brat also has a pure Yang spirit treasure. After parting ways with Tianqing, Laozu and the others, Lu Ping followed Laozu's directions and headed towards the place where the life plume feather had appeared. In reality, after leaving the land of fire poison, Lu Ping had already taken a shortcut and was not too far away from his destination. His hands drew a half-arc behind him, and then he forcefully waved them forward. 2 blue lights flashed and disappeared into the magma lake below. At this moment, a sharp sword cry rippled in the sky above the crater. Lu Ping's hands danced in the air, as if they had turned into a circle in midair. Looking at his serious expression, it was obvious that this process was quite difficult. At this moment, the boiling magma lake in the center suddenly changed. There seemed to be 2 forces chasing each other in the huge magma lake, stirring up the entire lake. In the beginning, it only drew 2 ripples on the lake's surface, and it did not cause much movement. However, as Lu Ping's hands waved in the air more and more urgently, the 2 forces in the lake rotated faster and faster, driving more and more magma. When the entire lake was stirred up, it continued to move deeper. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the entire magma lake began to rotate along with the 2 forces that Lu Ping controlled deep into the magma lake. The center of the boiling lake began to sink, and the surrounding lakeshore rose in the rotation of the magma lake. As the magma churned and rotated, it hit the edges of the lake, stirring up fiery red magma waves of tens of feet high. In the next moment, these edges were quickly melted and flattened. The edge of the crater became hotter and hotter, and the originally solidified crystals softened and even began to melt again. Only the crystal rocks near Lu Ping's feet were moist. Not only did they not melt, but water continued to seep in to cool them down. However, thicker and thicker white mist rose, drowning Lu Ping in it. Only his hands were still firmly drawing circles outside the white mist. The center of the magma lake had sunk for hundreds of feet due to the more intense rotation, but it was still bottomless. Lu Ping still did not relax at all. His hands drew circles in the air faster and faster, even turning into a cluster of afterimages in the air, as if there were dozens of palms covering the trajectory of Lu Ping's circles. After the center of the magma lake continued to sink for hundreds of feet, a colorful light finally burst out from the lake. Lu Ping's eyes lit up, and his hands still did not dare to slack off. The white mist rising from his feet formed a huge white jade lotus seat, carrying Lu Ping across the edge of the crater and into the center of the sinking magma lake. After 10 minutes, the entire magma lake returned to its previous calmness. At the moment when Lu Ping disappeared, the 2 forces that had been stirring in the magma lake suddenly dissipated. The thin water-flowing sword, which had been burned red and severely injured, was immediately pulled out and disappeared behind Lu Ping. The magma lake, which had lost its stirring force, was still rotating due to inertia, but the amplitude was indeed gradually decreasing. The sunken center of the lake also slowly began to rise. The colorful light was once again submerged by the magma. After 10 minutes, the entire magma lake returned to its previous calmness. However, at this moment, a dull loud noise suddenly came from the bottom of the magma lake, followed by the entire volcano trembling. The magma lake suddenly churned, and hundreds of feet of magma suddenly shot up from the center of the lake into the air. The entire magma lake shook violently, and the magma that overflowed from the crater instantly covered half of the mountain peak. At an unknown place at the bottom of the magma lake, the flame spirit coffin looked at everything in front of it with a dumbstruck expression. After a long time, it asked in disbelief, "Grandfather, could this be the place where Ancestor Luan Daoist's inheritance is located?" At the side, Yan Jiuxiao's eyes also flickered with fanaticism as he said, "That's right, this is the Ancestor's inheritance. If our Fire Phoenix race can obtain the treasure here, It will be worth it no matter how great the price we have to pay. The reason why the green sea snakes are so powerful is because of one of the 3 molted true spirit bodies that Jiao Daoren left behind. If we can obtain this treasure, we will definitely become the foundation for all eternity. Right at this moment, a loud bang suddenly came from above their heads. Chapter 1387. Just as Yan Jiuxiu and the flame spirit coffin entered the space beneath the lava lake, and were excited to see the treasures left behind by the Luan Taoist, a loud noise suddenly came from above their heads, and the entire space began to tremble. "Grandfather!" The flame spirit coffin's expression changed, and he said anxiously, "What are you panicking about?" Yan Jiuxiu seemed to be reprimanding Lu Tianping, but his expression was also solemn as he said, "How bold of him! He still wants to chase after us at this time. I wonder if it's Lu Tianping himself or someone else he brought with him." "Him? How can it be? The lava lake is connected to the entire Scarlet Mist Island's fire vein. Even grandfather had to go through a lot of trouble to enter. This person is just a great practitioner, and he practices water-based techniques that are restrained by the Scarlet Mist Island. How can he pass through the lava lake?" A look of suspicion flashed across Yan Jiuxiu's face, but he still said, "A mere great practitioner? This person fought with the old man before and retreated easily. This great practitioner is someone that even the old man can't do anything to. How dare you look at him like a normal late Dharma adept? However, this person was able to withstand the burning of the fire vein and pass through the lava lake. He must have some extraordinary treasures on him. This space will soon be discovered by him, so prepare for battle." The flame spirit coffin glanced towards the distance with a greedy expression, and then it said, "Grandfather, Lu Tianping has entered the abode and appeared somewhere. In any case, we're going to fight him, so why don't we take those treasures first?" Yan Jiuxiu snorted coldly, seemingly dissatisfied with the flame spirit coffin's question. He said, "My grandson is so blind. How can you not see that these things are all sealed by restrictive spells? Since this is the Luan Taoist's inheritance, then these restrictive spells must have been set by the Luan Taoist himself. Although I am a pure young body, it is extremely difficult to break the restrictive spells set by the 7th Patriarch of Heaven splitting. However, if I force it, I'm afraid that the treasures inside will be damaged. It's better to deal with the Water Sword Immortal first, and then we can break the restrictive spells." The flame spirit coffin's expression was ferocious as he said, "Grandfather, this time, we must make sure that Lu Tianping doesn't return. Otherwise, if we wait for the news of the Luan Taoist's inheritance to leak, we will be in big trouble." "Humph!" Yan Jiuxiu snorted coldly, and his expression immediately darkened. Yan Jiuxiu's guess was somewhat reliable. Although Lu Ping's level of cultivation far surpassed that of other practitioners of the same level, the skills that he practiced were greatly restricted in this place, so it would not be easy for him to pass through the lava lake. However, at this time, the Qingming River in Lu Ping's hand had not been completely used up in his cultivation. Although this lava lake was where the fire vein of the entire Scarlet Mist Island converged, Lu Ping did not intend to use the Qingming River to fight against the entire fire vein. He only wanted to temporarily open up a path through the lava lake. Although Lu Ping's level of cultivation had reached the threshold of the late Dharma stage so quickly because he had borrowed the power of the Qingming River's water vein, he had only used up a little more than a third of it. After advancing to the late Dharma stage, Lu Ping had secluded himself in Fei Ling Island for close to 3 years. Although he had also refined the water vein to cultivate, with the help of the spirit vein of Fei Ling Mountain, the consumption of the water vein had been greatly reduced. Now, there was still a third of the water vein left. It was precisely because of the help of the water vein that Lu Ping temporarily had the ability to pass through the lava lake's water vein. When Lu Ping jumped from the whirlpool of the lava lake into the rainbow light that had revealed itself, the swirling lava on both sides had already begun to recede. The rainbow light was obviously a space matrix that could be used to block the erosion of the lava. Just as Lu Ping freed one hand to take out a rainbow light, he saw that the Luan Taoist handkerchief that was wrapped in a feather in his other hand suddenly emitted a rainbow light as well. This rainbow light was exactly the same as the light emitted by the space matrix in front of him, and they even seemed to be resonating with each other. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, thinking that it was the feather that had such a miraculous effect. Unexpectedly, when he opened the handkerchief, he saw that not only was the Luan Taoist feather shining, but even the handkerchief was also shining brightly. There were 2 crystal clear water droplets in the handkerchief that looked like they were about to fall out of the handkerchief. Lu Ping knew that these 2 crystal clear water droplets that had soaked into the handkerchief were Luan Taoist's tears. Originally, there had been 3 teardrops in the handkerchief, but one of them had been used by Lu Qiner. In addition to these 2 teardrops, the phoenix embroidered in the bottom right corner of the handkerchief was also shining with a rainbow light. It was so vivid that it looked like it was about to fly out of the handkerchief. At this time, Lu Ping had already rushed into the rainbow light, and he felt a strong resistance from the space. Lu Ping thought for a moment, then put away the rainbow restriction-breaking talisman that he had just taken out, and immediately slashed the feather in front of him. The rainbow light that had originally covered Lu Ping's eyes was suddenly like a curtain that had been cut apart by the feather, revealing the true face behind the rainbow light. Lu Ping stepped into it, and the 2 sword lights flew into it before the rainbow light closed up behind him. Then the magma lake instantly closed up, and the falling magma made a loud roar, stirring up lava waves that were dozens of feet high on the surface of the lake. Even after Lu Ping stepped into the rainbow light, the space behind him also made a loud roar. It was a grotto heaven that wasn't too vast. Lu Ping's divine sense instantly swept out, and it almost filled half of the grotto heaven. Yan Jiuxiu was indeed inside, and the person beside him was also very familiar to Lu Ping. It was the flame spirit coffin that had once joined forces to resist Mara's army on the East Sea's illusory spirit island. However, the moment Lu Ping discovered the grandfather and grandson duo, they suddenly left the range of Lu Ping's divine sense. They didn't hide, and in an instant they had already left the range of Lu Ping's divine sense. Obviously, when Lu Ping discovered them, Yan Jiuxiu had also discovered Lu Ping's location. Although Lu Ping was conceited, he wasn't so arrogant as to think that he could make a pure yang cultivator flee at the mere sight of him. Lu Ping was stunned, and only then did he remember this grotto heaven, and his heart immediately burned with passion. Yan Jiuxiu's grandfather valued this grotto heaven so much, and when he thought of all his previous guesses, could it be that this grotto heaven was really related to the Luan Taoist? Or could it be that it was one of the Luan Taoist's treasures? When he thought of the Luan Taoist's treasures, even a figure like Lu Ping found it hard to maintain his composure for a moment. However, he quickly dispelled the distracting thoughts in his heart. He knew that this grotto heaven was still filled with danger. The method that Yan Jiuxiu had used to escape Lu Ping's divine sense just now had greatly terrified Lu Ping. If he used it to launch a sneak attack, Lu Ping wasn't confident that he could withstand it. At the same time, on the other side of the grotto heaven, the flame spirit coffin was flying away after his grandfather. Looking at his grandfather's gloomy face, the flame spirit coffin couldn't help but ask, "Grandfather, didn't we want to fight with Lu Tianping just now and deal with him first? Why did we?" Yan Jiuxiao's face darkened, and an imperceptible blush flashed across his face. He said angrily, "What do you know? This Lu Tianping hid his strength so well that even the old man was almost fooled by him. This person didn't conceal his divine sense just now, so you should have sensed it as well. That level of divine sense could instantly sweep a radius of over 100 miles. This is not the level of divine sense that a late Dharma adept should have. Even the old man is far inferior to him." "What? That's impossible!" the flame spirit coffin exclaimed. "Grandfather, are you saying that this Lu Tianping has been hiding his level of cultivation all this time and that he is now a pure young adept?" Yan Jiuxiu seemed to be a little hesitant, but he still said, "Not only his level of cultivation, but also the strong aura that was displayed when his divine sense came into contact with the old man just now. That strong pure yang aura is not something that an ordinary great adept can condense. It is almost comparable to an existence of a pure yang adept. Even when Xiao Baiyu advanced to the late Dharma stage, the pure yang aura on his body was not as strong as this person's. At the mention of Xiao Baiyu, even the flame spirit coffin's eyes flashed with fear. That was an existence that could kill a pure yang adept at the late Dharma stage. Could it be that Lu Tianping was even stronger than Xiao Baiyu? No wonder grandfather had fled, yes, avoided the battle. At this time, Yan Jiuxiao slowed down his escape technique and said, "Strange, why hasn't that Lu Tianping caught up with us? Although the space in this cave is unusually sturdy, it is also extremely narrow. If that Lu Tianping has made up his mind to make things difficult for the old man, it will not be easy for us to avoid him." The flame spirit coffin said softly. Could it be that Lu Tianping has entered this place because he has been attracted by the hidden treasures of the Luan Taoist, and wants to snatch as many treasures as possible before we do? Yan Jiuxiao thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "That should be the case." Then, he chuckled coldly and said, "In the end, he was born in the barren lands of the North Sea. When he sees treasures, he doesn't care about anything else. We should also speed up and take control of as many treasures as possible before he does. Then, we will settle the score with him in the end." The flame spirit coffin sneered and said, "I'm just afraid that he will run away when the time comes." Yan Jiuxiao laughed but didn't say anything. No one knew what he was thinking in his heart other than himself. However, the flame spirit coffin's eyes quickly lit up. He pointed at a 7-colored ray of light that was over 300 meters away and said, "Grandfather, look over there." A 7-colored talisman had already appeared in Yan Jiuxiao's palm. His eyes shone with excitement. The 7-colored talisman had already turned into a streak of light and flew into the 7-colored ray of light in front of him. The flame spirit coffin sighed in admiration and said, "A 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman. Grandfather actually has such an item. This time, all of the Luan Taoist treasures will definitely fall into the hands of our Fire Phoenix race," Yan Jiuxiao said proudly. Fortunately, the old man had prepared ahead of time and paid a huge price to exchange for 5 7-colored restriction-breaking talismans from the Crystal Palace. Otherwise, it would have taken us a lot of effort to break these restrictions this time. Although the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman was said to be able to break all restrictions and formations in the world, in reality, it depended on how powerful the restriction formation was. If the restriction formation was too powerful, the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman could only weaken it, and not break it on the spot. What's more, this place was the Luan Taoist treasures. It was extremely likely that these restrictions were created by the Luan Taoist, so it would be far too easy to break them with a single restriction-breaking talisman. Of course, if several restriction-breaking talismans were used in combination, it might not be impossible to break them easily. However, Yan Jiuxiao only had a total of 5 7-colored restriction-breaking talismans on him, and he had only obtained them from the Crystal Palace after going through a lot of trouble. Naturally, he wouldn't use up all of them in one place. As expected, Yan Jiuxiao had made ample preparations for the Luan Taoist treasures. After suppressing this restriction with another 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman, his hands moved like butterflies, forming 7 to 8 different types of restriction-breaking hand seals in quick succession. One after another, they landed on the restriction, continuously weakening it. Although the 7-colored light flickered, it wasn't very intense. Through the light, one could still see that there was a flickering feather imprisoned within the restriction. The flame spirit coffin's eyes lit up, and he said, "This is the Luan Taoist's natal plume feather. It's exactly the same as the Tuar clan's cultivators obtained on Scarlet Mist Island." Yan Jiuxiao nodded and said, "That's right. The Luan clan can only condense 3 natal plume feathers at most. Only those who have reached the 9th grade gold core can carve 3 supreme divine abilities on top of their 3 natal plume feathers to form their natal arts. Legend has it that Lord Ancestor was able to condense 7 natal plume feathers and control 7 supreme divine abilities. These 7 supreme divine abilities are extraordinary. They are genuine heaven-splitting divine abilities. If we can get our hands on them, Not even the Emerald Sea Spirit Serpent clan will be able to act arrogantly in front of us when Taoist Luan unleashes all 7 of them. Now that Scarlet Mist Island has surfaced from the sea, it must be because the restriction on the inheritance has loosened. Before this, 3 of the plume feathers were actually taken out of the inheritance during the volcanic eruption. Fortunately, Lord Ancestor had already guessed this, so our clan's cultivators never relaxed their investigation of Scarlet Mist Island. That's why we found 2 of the plume feathers. Unfortunately, Badjinling actually injured our clan's cultivators and took the 3rd one. There should be 4 more feathers in the inheritance right now. Yan Jiuxiao sneered and said, "So what if Xinling obtained one of the plume feathers? This plume feather contains the protection of the Luan Taoist's will. If one isn't a direct descendant of the Luan Taoist, one must first obtain the acknowledgement of the will of the Luan Taoist in order to comprehend the heaven-splitting divine ability contained within, or directly suppress the will of the Luan Taoist and forcefully activate the heaven-splitting divine ability within. The former is fine. Human cultivators have impure bloodlines, so it's not impossible for them to obtain the acknowledgement of the will of the Luan Taoist, but it's extremely difficult. As for the latter, although it's only a fragment of the will of the Luan Taoist sealed inside, I'm afraid only those old monsters in the present world can suppress it. This isn't something those crushed stones in the Tao altar world can compare to." Just as Yan Jiuxiu and Yan Jiuxiu were doing their best to break the restrictions of the inheritance, the 2 treasures in Lu Ping's hands, the rainbow plume feather and the Luan Taoist handkerchief, both flew out from Lu Ping's hands. Under Lu Ping's astonished gaze, the 2 treasures seemed to sense something and flew in 2 different directions, trying to escape from Lu Ping's control. Naturally, Lu Ping wouldn't let these 2 treasures escape. However, Lu Ping still used his divine sense to control his true essence to form an imprisonment space in a radius of 100 feet in front of him. Once the 2 treasures had flown out 100 feet, it was enough for Lu Ping to determine the direction in which they were trying to escape. The direction in which the rainbow plume flew did not attract Lu Ping's attention. On the contrary, Lu Ping's attention was drawn to the Luan Taoist handkerchief in another direction. This Luan Taoist handkerchief contained Jiao Doran's handkerchief. From this handkerchief, Lu Ping had comprehended the sword of opening the heavens. Fight. Kill. And die. At this moment, this paragraph of Jiao Doran's handkerchief flashed continuously on the handkerchief. What surprised Lu Ping even more was that when Jiao Doran's handkerchief began to flash, Lu Ping seemed to sense a very strong divine sense. This kind of feeling was very familiar to Lu Ping. Therefore, when Lu Ping was still a core forging stage cultivator, he had a similar feeling in the sacred fallen lake at the source of the river in the western wilderness. However, this feeling was stronger for Lu Ping now. In the sacred fallen lake, the mysterious feeling that came from the bloodline of Lu Ping allowed Lu Ping to obtain the horn that Jiao Doran had left there. At this time, the horn had been carved by Lu Ping's own true essence into the sword of the real spirit. Now, it had accompanied Lu Ping through the second thunder tribulation and became a second tribulation spiritual treasure. Now this kind of feeling was even stronger and more direct. Could it be that there was a treasure comparable to Jiao Doran's horn in this grotto heaven space? At this time, Lu Ping couldn't care less about Luan Taoist's relic. For Lu Ping, Jiao Doran was much more important than Luan Taoist. Moreover, this space was vast. It seemed that Luan Taoist's relic was not only in one place. Since he had to search one place by one, Lu Ping naturally had to find the hidden relic that was related to Jiao Doran. At this time, Lu Ping suddenly moved his mind. The sword of the real spirit, Emoli, suddenly flashed out from behind Lu Ping. Her eyes were a little blurred as she looked into the distance of the grotto heaven. It was the same direction that the handkerchief wanted to fly to. After crossing the second thunder tribulation with Lu Ping and becoming a second tribulation spiritual treasure, Emoli, who originally looked like a 12 or 13-year-old girl, seemed to have grown a lot. She looked about 14 or 15 years old, but her expression had become more and more indifferent. Lu Ping's heart moved, and he asked, "Emoli, did you find anything?" Emily nodded and pointed in the direction that the handkerchief was flying in. There seems to be something that is closely related to me. I want to go there and take a look. Lu Ping thought for a moment, and the quintessential essence in his body evolved. A stream of water vapor condensed into a rope. One end was tied to a corner of the handkerchief, and the other end was connected to Lu Ping's finger. Although the water rope was small, it was formed by Lu Ping's water control art. With Lu Ping's current cultivation base, the water rope's tenacity was comparable to that of metal. Lu Ping held this water rope like he was flying a kite. He let the handkerchief fly into the depths of the grotto heaven, and Lu Ping chased after the handkerchief. In one breath, Lu Ping followed the handkerchief for a few dozen miles. In the central plains, Lu Ping even came across a place shrouded in colorful light. Although the light shrouded the item inside, even his divine sense couldn't detect it. But this place was obviously a treasure that was imprisoned in a powerful seal. However, Lu Ping only hesitated for a moment before he gave up and left. Chapter 1388. Yan Jiuxiu excitedly suppressed the 3-foot-long tail feather that had flown out of the rainbow restriction. Beside him, the flame spirit coffin said excitedly, "Grandfather, we've already obtained 3 of the Luan Taoist's natal tail feathers." Yan Jiuxiu put away the tail feather and maintained a calm expression. He said, "There are still 3 more tail feathers in this grotto heaven. Lu Tianping won't return empty-handed. It looks like we'll have to speed up." After a pause, Yan Jiuxiu turned to the flame spirit coffin beside him and said, "You have to get through your second lightning tribulation as soon as possible. If you can't obtain the acknowledgement of the Luan Taoists from the very beginning, you'll have to wait until you've advanced to the late Dharma stage before you'll be able to comprehend it." Although Lu Ping saw a place covered in rainbow restrictions along the way, he gritted his teeth and gave up in the end. He continued to fly in the direction that the Luan Taoist's handkerchief had drifted in. At the same time, he could feel that the bloodline within his body was becoming more and more sensitive to this mysterious feeling. The curiosity in Lu Ping's heart grew stronger and stronger. What exactly was this thing that could trigger Jiao Doran's handkerchief, the sword of the true spirit Emoli, and the mysterious feeling in Lu Ping's bloodline? The handkerchief was being pulled by Lu Ping like a kite, but it suddenly made a turn in the air. Lu Ping was slightly taken aback when he saw that the handkerchief had indeed stopped moving. Instead, it made another turn in the air. Lu Ping could feel that the feeling in his bloodline seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. The handkerchief that had lost its direction seemed to be telling him that the bloodline was sensing the item was right here, but there was clearly nothing in front of him. Spatial ability. Lu Ping's first reaction was that the treasure was definitely hidden somewhere in the void here. However, this was only a grotto heaven that barely existed. It wasn't a small kiliacosm like the Tao Altar's world. If he was in a spirit space, it might be very difficult to use the space divine ability again and open up the void in front of him, but it was not impossible. With Lu Ping's current cultivation strength, he thought he could do it. However, the spatial grotto heaven in front of him was far less stable than the space of a minor kiliacosm. It was already extremely difficult to barely use spatial abilities, not to mention that he had to open up another space in this spatial grotto heaven and embed it into this grotto heaven. Only a person like the Luan Taoist, the 7th patriarch of the heaven opening sect, could achieve such a magical realm. However, it was extremely tricky for Lu Ping at this moment. Although it was much easier to break the chain of caves than to use this kind of divine sense, it was, after all, for the person who used this kind of divine sense. For Lu Ping, it was obviously a troublesome thing. It was not a big deal if the embedded space and the treasures hidden inside were lost. However, if it affected the cave and even caused the cave to collapse, it would not be a joke. The cave was like a magma lake. "This is really a bit tricky." Lu Ping's divine sense was compressed to a radius of 300 feet, hoping to find some clues within the range of the handkerchief. In fact, Lu Ping did find that the void in front of him was quite strange. However, it was extremely difficult for Lu Ping to easily open this hidden space, because Lu Ping had found that this hidden space had formed a subtle connection with the cave. This was the method Lu Ping used to crack it. If there was a slight mistake, it was very likely to cause the entire cave to shake. Lu Ping carefully tried several kinds of space divine sense, but none of them worked. On the contrary, it almost caused the entire cave to shake. Lu Ping was so scared that he had to give up trying. What should he do? In the process of trying to open this hidden space, although Lu Ping did not succeed, he also opened up a few space cracks several times. Every time a space crack was opened, Lu Ping could clearly feel that the reaction from the divine sense would immediately strengthen. The Dharma form in the core space would also become more and more impatient and active. After several fruitless attempts, Lu Ping simply summoned Have Praying Mantis and asked, "Are you confident?" Praying Mantis replied proudly, "Of course I'm confident. It's just that our methods have always been direct, and you can't sense the location of the treasure hidden in the space. If we cut it like this, we can break the space without affecting the heavenly abode, but don't blame us if the treasure hidden inside is damaged as well." Although a trace of reluctance flashed across Lu Ping's face, he still said, "If we open it, we might still be able to get something. If we can't open it, we won't even know what's inside." Praying Mantis thought about it, and also said, "This hidden space was supplemented by a space prohibition. You have the Rainbow Restriction Breaking Talisman in your hand. Although it is not very useful against such a high-level space prohibition, it can more or less weaken it. In this way, we can also use less strength. If the things inside are strong enough, even if they are cut, they can still be preserved." Lu Ping thought about it and agreed. He also took out a shining rainbow talisman in his hand and stuck it in the space in front of him, where his divine sense had previously detected a crack. After Lu Ping's cultivation had advanced to the late Dharma stage, his talisman-making skills had improved. In addition, Lu Ping had personally heard the mantra of making the Rainbow Restriction-Breaking Talisman in the Tao Altar world. This made Lu Ping's improvement in making restriction-breaking talismans far exceed that of making other talismans after he advanced to the late Dharma stage. Originally, Lu Ping could only make 6-color restriction-breaking talismans, and the success rate was not high. However, after he came out of seclusion on Fei Ling Island, he could already make 7-color restriction-breaking talismans, which represented the highest level of restriction-breaking talismans. Although the success rate was still very low, Lu Ping had prepared a lot of precious talisman papers for this. Although he had wasted a lot of them, he still had a few 7-color restriction-breaking talismans in his hands. In addition, he still had a few 7-color restriction-breaking talismans that Tian Shui Laozu had given him. Now, the number of 7-color restriction-breaking talismans in Lu Ping's hands was not small. Using 1 or 2 talismans was not a big deal to him. After the 7-color restriction-breaking talismans flashed, there was a sudden disturbance in the empty space. Lu Ping's eyes lit up. He stretched out both his hands, and a huge purplish-gold pair of scissors appeared in each of his hands. A dragon's roar sounded from within Lu Ping's body. 2 waves of thick purplish-blue inner yuan flowed into the pure yang spiritual treasures along his arms. As the thick inner yuan was too vigorous, it even caused a faint layer of purplish-blue mist to appear around Lu Ping's arms. Clang! Pulling his arms outwards, the blades of the pure yang spiritual treasures immediately opened up. 2 purplish-gold blade lights pierced through the space in front of him from the left and right. After that, Lu Ping's arms abruptly closed up. Another clang sound was heard. The blades of the scissors closed up, and the space in front of him trembled. After that, a ding sound was heard. The blade lights from the scissors seemed to have cut something. Lu Ping's expression changed. He hurriedly dispersed the surging inner yuan in his arms and released the scissors in his hands. After that, the space in front of him was like a piece of cloth that had been torn apart, revealing a small space behind it. Lu Ping's face lit up with joy. He saw a half-foot-tall purple jade essence bottle in the small space. The surface of the bottle was densely engraved with runic patterns, and there were wisps of spiritual chi flowing around the runic patterns. Then, the broken runic patterns at the bottle's mouth dissipated into the air. Along with the spiritual chi, there was also a faint blood mist. At the mouth of the bottle, the original slender bottleneck was missing half at this time. It was obviously cut by the scissors, and the remaining small half of the bottleneck and the bottle stopper had fallen to the ground at the moment when the space was broken. Chapter 1389. Because the jade bottle was damaged, the glyphs engraved on the bottle made it impossible for Lu Ping to suppress the flood dragon's blood essence from dispersing. This caused Lu Ping to be at a loss for what to do. He could only desperately absorb the dissipating blood mist into his stomach while circulating the dragon's soaring star river technique to refine the blood mist into his blood vessels. Looking at the jade bottle in his hand, Lu Ping was extremely anxious. What should he do? Naturally, he couldn't just watch the flood dragon's blood essence dissipate into a blood mist. However, he didn't have any methods to stop the blood mist from dispersing. Could it be that he had to refine the flood dragon's blood essence here? However, there was obviously more than one treasure hidden in this space. Thinking about the place Lu Ping had encountered on the way here that was covered by a rainbow restriction, there must be an extremely rare treasure sealed inside. Thinking about the Luan Taoist's feather in Tianqin Laozu's hand, Lu Ping's heart became even more hesitant. Just as Lu Ping was still hesitating, the jade bottle in Lu Ping's hand made a decision for him. The blood mist in the jade bottle continued to dissipate, forcing Lu Ping to maintain the circulation of the true yuan in his body. At the same time, he continuously absorbed the dissipating blood mist into his stomach to refine it. While Lu Ping was refining the Jiao Jiao's blood essence, the Dharma dragon in his heart core space had already jumped out of the suspended sea. The true essence in the Jiao Jiao's blood essence was brought into his heart and slowly seeped into the heart core space. Then, the entire heart core space was shrouded in a seven-colored brilliance. The Dharma dragon flew up and down in the heart core space, letting out happy dragon roars from time to time. A strange expression appeared on Lu Ping's face. Whether it was the Dharma power of the dragon or his own blood, they had all entered an extremely excited state because of refining the dissipating flood dragon's blood essence. This state was too familiar to Lu Ping. It was a great opportunity for Lu Ping's epiphany and the growth of his cultivation. If he forcibly interrupted this process at this time, he would probably have to put in 10 times more effort in order to make up for this loss in the future. Lu Ping gritted his teeth. After all, to him, this bottle of flood dragon's blood essence was much more important than the Luan Taoist's life feather. Even though Lyra Laozu had once said that the life feather might contain some top secret about the magic left behind by the Luan Taoist, in Lu Ping's opinion, this bottle of flood dragon's blood essence might even be the key for Lu Ping to pass through the third thunder trial in the future, ushering in the 9th Dharma power transformation, and becoming a pure yang. This time, Lu Ping had passed the second thunder tribulations and entered the late Dharma stage. Previously, he had not absorbed the essence of the Jiao dragon's bloodline. But after passing the thunder tribulations, his Dharma power of the dragon had successfully undergone its 8th transformation. Before the thunder trial, Lu Ping had been a little nervous. He did not know if he would be able to successfully usher in the Dharma power transformation. But after the thunder trial, Lu Ping could clearly feel the changes in his Dharma power transformation, and this change came from a mutation in Lu Ping's bloodline before he advanced to the late Dharma power transformation. Lu Ping guessed that the reason for this mutation came from when he had just advanced to the blood condensation realm and decided to focus on his bloodline. At that time, the bloodlines in Lu Ping's body were competing. Among them, the flood dragon's blood essence had swallowed the turtle dragon's blood essence, and stood out among the other major bloodlines, suppressing the other 5 bloodlines and becoming Lu Ping's main bloodline. After that, when Lu Ping advanced to the second level of the blood condensation realm, he did not encounter any bottlenecks in the purification of his bloodline. Lu Ping had always thought that the turtle dragon's blood essence had already swallowed and assimilated the turtle dragon's blood essence. But as Lu Ping's level of cultivation increased, and he understood more about himself, Lu Ping realized that the truth was not as simple as he had imagined. The turtle dragon's blood essence had not been refined by his own bloodline, or rather, it had not been completely refined. This was especially so after Lu Ping went into closed-door training in the 5 Elements tortoise chamber. The hidden turtle dragon's blood essence had even shown signs of strengthening. Now that he thought about it, when Lu Ping entered the early stage of the blood condensation realm and decided to focus on his bloodline, he had refined the turtle dragon's blood essence in one go. Now that he thought about it, he felt that the process was very strange. As Lu Ping's level of cultivation increased, Lu Ping became more and more certain that the turtle dragon's blood essence, which had not been completely refined, was a hidden danger in his body. And this hidden danger would become more obvious as his cultivation increased. Lu Ping had once tried to completely refine the turtle dragon's blood essence. However, during the first lightning tribulation in the dark space sea, Lu Ping could not find the time to refine the turtle dragon's blood essence. Perhaps it was because he had already refined the lone eagle's blood essence. This time, the second lightning tribulation was originally a risk for Lu Ping, but in the end, Lu Ping still successfully summoned the second lightning tribulation, causing the dragon Dharma power to welcome the 8th transformation. The turtle dragon's blood essence in his body was finally completely refined, and the hidden danger was completely eliminated. And now, if he refined the flood dragon's blood essence in this jade bottle, in Lu Ping's opinion, in the future when he summoned the 3rd lightning tribulation and advanced to the pure yang stage, he would not have to worry about finding the essence of the flood dragon's blood essence. This bottle of flood dragon's blood essence could completely replace it, and it would be more than enough. After all, it was very likely that this was Jiao Doran's own blood essence. Moreover, if Lu Ping wanted to find a suitable flood dragon's blood essence, it was very likely that he would have to face a top-level demonic cultivator at the peak of the late Dharma Laws stage, or even a top-level demonic cultivator at the pure yang stage, to be able to fulfill the requirements of replenishing the flood dragon's blood essence. Not to mention the difficulty of dealing with pure yang demonic cultivators. Just the fact that these flood dragons' blood essence had to be from a top-level demonic clan was enough to give Lu Ping a headache. These demonic cultivators often had many connections and were not weak, so it was not easy to kill one of them. If the power behind them was drawn out, even Lu Ping himself would have to pay a huge price to deal with it. From this point of view, this bottle of flood dragon's blood essence had come at the right time. Since things had come to this, Lu Ping simply put the possibility of the Luan Taoist's treasure hidden in this cave to the back of his mind. He would first integrate this bottle of flood dragon's blood essence into his bloodline. It wasn't easy to refine this bottle of blood essence, and Lu Ping didn't plan to refine it here. After all, there were still 2 fire Luans eyeing him covetously in the grotto heaven. He just wanted to fuse the blood essence into his bloodline and refine it in seclusion after he exited the grotto heaven. He believed that by then, Lu Ping's cultivation base would rise significantly. This was also inspired by the tortoise's blood essence. Otherwise, Lu Ping would not have been able to think of a way to temporarily integrate the flood dragon's blood essence into his bloodline so that he could refine it later. Even so, during the process of temporarily integrating this bottle of flood dragon's blood essence into his bloodline, Lu Ping still needed to continuously practice his cultivation method. During this process, a small amount of flood dragon's blood essence was completely refined, and Lu Ping could even clearly feel the growth of his own cultivation. Although this process was very small, with Lu Ping's cultivation foundation, it was already extremely difficult for his divine sense to clearly sense the growth of his cultivation. Moreover, it was not only Lu Ping's cultivation that had increased, but also the Dharma form of the dragon in the core space. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Ping took a deep breath, turned the last trace of flood dragon's blood essence into a blood mist, and swallowed it into his stomach. After a while, he slowly opened his eyes, and a trace of blood appeared in his sharp eyes, but it quickly disappeared. Lu Ping stood up and weighed the jade bottle in his hand. His eyes once again fell on the complex runes carved on the surface of the jade bottle. After thinking for a while, he put it away together with the bottle mouth that had been cut off by the numinous treasure scissors. Lu Ping used his divine sense to look inside himself, and he could feel that at this time, his bloodline was like a surging river, rumbling and roaring. At this time, although Lu Ping could no longer cultivate in seclusion, the soaring dragon galaxy technique was still operating on its own, constantly refining the flood dragon's blood essence that had been integrated into his bloodline. Then, under the guidance of his bloodline, the flood dragon's blood essence continuously entered the core space through his heart along with the true essence. The entire core space was still enveloped by the seven-colored light that seeped into his bloodline. Ever since Lu Ping had inhaled the first mouthful of blood mist, the Dharma form of the dragon had been flying in the sky above the suspended sea, its entire body bathed in the seven-colored light. It could be said that at this time, Lu Ping's cultivation was growing very slowly, but it was constantly increasing. Lu Ping pinched his fingers and made a slight calculation, and he was shocked. Originally, he thought that it would only take a few hours to simply integrate the flood dragon's blood essence into his bloodline. Unexpectedly, 2 days had passed. Fortunately, Yan Zhixiao and his grandson hadn't found this place during these 2 days. Otherwise, if they were to launch a sneak attack, and he had no time to pay attention to anything else, it was extremely likely that he would be injured by the two of them. However, at the same time, Lu Ping also felt that it was strange. The space in this heavenly abode wasn't very wide, so why hadn't the two of them seen him even after 2 days had passed? At the same time, on the other side of the heavenly abode, the flame spirit coffin watched as his grandfather happily put away the third tail feather. He couldn't help but ask, "Lord Grandfather, why haven't we encountered that Lu Tianping yet? This heavenly abode isn't very big, so 2 days should be more than enough for us to meet. Could it be that Lu Tianping is hiding from us? Or could it be that Lu Tianping still hasn't broken any of the restrictions around the inheritance trove?" When Yan Zhixiao and his grandson heard this, the joy on Yan Zhixiao's face disappeared and was replaced by a trace of doubt. He said, "Let's not bother with him for now. Currently, 3 of the 4 tail feathers in this heavenly abode are in our hands. Out of the 7 fundamental tail feathers of Luan Daoist, 6 are already in the hands of our Fire Phoenix clan. Only the last one should be in the direction that Lu Tianping went. As for what that person is doing, we'll naturally know once we get there." Just as Yan Zhixiao and his grandson were rushing in the direction of Lu Ping had already returned to the 7-colored restriction he had seen on the way here. After a brief probe, Lu Ping threw out his hands in succession. 3 restriction-breaking talismans that flickered with 7-colored splendor floated into the 7-colored restriction in front of him. Then, the light of the restriction and the talismans dimmed as if they were weakening each other. The praying mantis climbed onto Lu Ping's shoulder and said eagerly, "So, are you going to cut it or not?" Lu Ping said in a bad mood, "Cut what? This restriction can be broken as long as we spend some time. What if we let you destroy the treasures inside? You won't be lucky every time." Chapter 1390. Lu Ping used the seeping water sword technique to slowly peel away the layers of restrictions that had already been weakened by the 3 rainbow talismans. Lu Ping, who had advanced to the late Dharma stage, had reached an extremely high level in both the control of his divine will and the control of his inner yuan. Lu Ping used the seeping water sword technique to pierce through the layers of restrictions like peeling away layers of eggshells. Lu Ping was completely confident that he would be able to retract his sword technique before he completely broke through the restrictions to avoid harming the items that were sealed within the restrictions. Just as Lu Ping was peeling away the layers of restrictions in front of him until only the last hazy layer of rainbow was left, Lu Ping's expression changed. As far as his divine will could see, 2 streaks of light had already streaked across the sky and were rapidly flying in his direction. "Lord Grandfather, since this space is the inheritance left behind by our ancestor, Luan Daoist, are there any other treasures aside from these 7 light feathers? Otherwise, Lu Tianping would not have stayed in this corner of the space for 2 whole days." The flame spirit coffin was clearly a little worried. Although he firmly believed that his grandfather would be able to defeat Lu Tianping, judging from Yan Jiuxiao's expression, even if Lu Tianping was defeated, he would still be able to calmly retreat. If that was the case, it would not be so easy for Yan Jiuxia to take away the treasures that Lu Tianping had obtained from the space. Yan Jiuxiao's expression was calm, but his heart was also a little unsettled. Lu Ping's series of performances had truly exceeded his expectations. The Fire Phoenix tribe leader, who had originally been full of confidence, was now a little hesitant. At this moment, Yan Jiuxiao's expression also became serious. Lu Ping had not deliberately concealed his presence, so not long after Lu Ping had discovered the grandfather and grandson duo, Yan Jiuxiao also discovered Lu Ping, who was in the midst of breaking through the restrictions. This is a good chance. Grandfather will go first, Jean will follow. With that, Yan Jiuxiao's body turned into a streak of rainbow light, and in the blink of an eye, he had crossed a distance of several dozen kilometers. Lu Ping looked up and saw that the streak of rainbow light had suddenly turned into a giant fireball, and in Lu Ping's eyes, it was growing larger and larger as it came crashing down towards his head. At this time, the restriction in front of Lu Ping only had a thin membrane left. Lu Ping could even see through this membrane that the item sealed within was a feather that was exactly the same as the one in his hand. A hint of anger flashed across Lu Ping's face. He formed a sword seal with his hand, and the sword of true spirit, Amoli, which had already transformed into a second tribulation spirit artifact, flew out from behind Lu Ping. It swayed in the air for a moment, and a dense amount of sword light separated from its blade, transforming into a tsunami of sword waves that swept towards the falling fireball. Yan Jiuxia had been accumulating power for a long time while Lu Ping was clearly not prepared. Although the Sword of True Spirit's great river flows to the east had a powerful aura, it was still broken by the fireball. Lu Ping's figure was forced back over 100 meters, clearly at a disadvantage. The fireball had also been extinguished, and it turned into an orange-red flame that flew back into Yan Jiuxiao's hand. The two of them exchanged blows. Yan Jiuxiao had a slight upper hand, but he was still unable to reach the rainbow restriction. On the other hand, Lu Ping had been forced back over 100 meters. However, amidst a complacent laugh, the flame spirit coffin took the opportunity to descend, landing right in front of the restriction that was about to be broken. It abruptly spat out a fireball and smashed it towards the restriction. It clearly did not care if the fireball would damage the item sealed within the restriction. However, since it was clear that the item sealed within the restriction was a feather, Yan Jiuxia, as the vessel that bore the 7 great innate abilities of the Luan Taoist, was naturally not worried that the flame spirit coffin's fireball would damage the feather. After all, the two originated from the same source. However, in the face of the flame spirit coffin's complacent laughter, Lu Ping also revealed a mocking smile. Beside him, Yan Jiuxiao seemed to sense something. His expression changed as he shouted, "Jean, be careful!" "What?" The flame spirit coffin did not understand what was going on. However, the instant the restriction in front of him shattered, the flame spirit coffin felt a chill run down his spine. The flame spirit coffin had quick reflexes. How could he not know that Lu Ping had already prepared a backup plan near the restriction? A burst of flames suddenly burst forth from his body, and he pounced to the side. At the same time, he reached out to grab the feather that was sealed within the restriction. However, how could Lu Ping's backup plan not anticipate the flame spirit coffin's next response? A crisp shout came from behind the flame spirit coffin. Even though the flame spirit coffin had dodged extremely quickly, Lu Xiaoping's well-planned attack still pierced through the flame spirit coffin's left shoulder. Then, the azure willow sword caught up to the flame spirit coffin and snatched the feather that was about to reach his hand. Then, it fell into Lu Xiaoping's hand. At this time, the flame spirit coffin's miserable cry from having his shoulder pierced had just resounded. Yan Jiuxiao had already rushed over to help. However, Lu Ping naturally would not sit by and watch his avatar fall into danger. The swords of true spirit circling around him shook, and 6 dragons roared as they charged towards Yan Jiuxiao. Fight! 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 Yan Jiuxiao sneered and said, You think you can stop the old man with this kind of method? The fire spirit orb in Yan Jiuxiao's hand was also a second tribulation spirit artifact, and with the support of Yan Jiuxiao's fire divine ability, it became even more powerful. 6 fireballs separated from the fire spirit orb and exploded in front of the 6 flood dragons. The 6 flood dragons let out miserable howls as their bodies were torn to shreds. Haha, everyone says that the North Sea's Lu Tianping possesses the heaven-splitting divine ability, but it looks like the old man is only SOSO. Lu Ping received the rainbow feather from his avatar, Lu Xiaoping, who was standing on his shoulder. He waved the feather at Yan Jiuxiao and said with a faint smile, I originally only wanted this feather. Since the Fire Phoenix Patriarch has the heart to fight, then let's start over. Yan Jiuxiao's face darkened. Earlier, Lu Ping's battle formula had been broken, but the rainbow feather was already in Lu Ping's hands. In all fairness, Yan Jiuxiao had already lost to Lu Ping by 1 move. But before Yan Jiuxiao could do anything, the flame spirit coffin was the first to lose his patience. He scolded Lu Ping. Lu Tianping, you are too arrogant. There is no need for grandfather to make a move today. Let me test your methods first. As he spoke, another fireball appeared in the flame spirit coffin's hand. The flame spirit coffin pushed forward with a solemn expression, and the fireball disappeared into thin air before it could even travel 10 meters away from his palm. When it reappeared, it had already turned into a cage of flames, trapping Lu Ping inside. When the flame spirit coffin saw that Lu Ping actually didn't try to dodge, a trace of joy flashed through his heart. But at the same time, it was also filled with anger. He was happy because Lu Tianping actually dared to block the peerless flame divine ability that he had painstakingly cultivated for several hundred years. He was angry because Lu Ping's actions clearly showed that he didn't take him seriously at all. Lu Ping looked at Yan Jiuxiao with a faint smile on his face and said, Fire Phoenix Patriarch, it's best if you let your grandson back down. Otherwise it would be bad if you accidentally injure him while we are sparring. Before Yan Jiuxiao could say anything, the flame spirit coffin was already unable to restrain his anger. He shouted loudly, You've gone too far! Cage of flames, burn! As soon as he finished speaking, the flame spirit coffin clapped his hands together, and the flames attached to the cage of flames abruptly swelled. The raging flames formed a huge fireball, and Lu Ping's figure was completely covered in flames. The corner of the flame spirit coffin's mouth curled into a sinister smile. He was just about to open his mouth to mock Lu Ping for overestimating himself when he suddenly heard his grandfather, Yan Jiuxiao, yell in a low voice, Careful, he's about to come out. You should back down. The flame spirit coffin was stunned as he looked at the raging flames in front of him. Come out? How was he supposed to come out? This flame cage had been personally praised by his grandfather. If a practitioner of the same level was trapped in it, they would lose 90% of their chances of survival. Even a great practitioner of the late Dharma stage would have to expend a lot of effort to escape. However, a look of panic quickly appeared on the flame spirit coffin's face. This supreme magical power that he had cultivated using a high-grade heaven-level spirit fire could be said to be his strongest technique. However, that Lu Tianping walked out of the flame cage as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. The raging flames actually could not stop him at all. In fact, when Lu Ping walked out of the cage leisurely, the flames around him extinguished on their own. They only started burning again after Lu Ping left the cage. That was a spiritual fire that had been cultivated using a high-grade heaven-level spirit fire as its foundation. Even if it did not have the ability to burn mountains and boil seas, it would at least require a lot of effort to break through the shackles of this flame cage when sparring with other late Dharma adepts of the same clan. How was it that Lu Tianping, who was also at the late Dharma stage, could treat his supreme magical power as nothing? Lu Ping's smiling face was filled with murderous intent. He said, Brother Coffin and I have been friends for a long time. It would be impolite not to reciprocate. Brother Coffin, Please take a blow from me. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a gurgling sound in front of Lu Ping. A ball of water appeared out of thin air and condensed into a water ball. It then floated slowly towards the flame spirit coffin. Please accept it. The flame spirit coffin felt that Lu Ping's smile was so dazzling. However, the flame spirit coffin really could not tell how the slow and leisurely water ball in front of him was a threat. However, the flame spirit coffin was not a fool. Naturally, it would not think that Lu Ping had so seriously pushed out such a water ball just to make fun of it. Since it did not know what was going on, it might as well move aside first. However, just as the flame spirit coffin was trying to move away from the water ball, a tyrannical divine consciousness suddenly invaded the flame spirit coffin's divine consciousness protection range. The flame spirit coffin felt as if his divine consciousness was suddenly hit hard by a hammer. His body, which was about to move away, staggered. Although he knew what was going on, he could no longer coordinate his body. He could only watch as the water ball in front of him came crashing towards him. What was hidden in this water ball? Out of nowhere, the flame spirit coffin thought that since he could not avoid it, he might as well try Lu Tianping's water ball technique. Could it be just an ordinary water ball just to humiliate him? However, before this thought could be realized, Yan Jiuxiao's slightly nervous voice sounded in his ears. Don't hurt my grandson! Could this water ball really hurt people? The flame spirit coffin's doubts were quickly answered. A wall of fire suddenly rose in front of the flame spirit coffin. However, before the flame spirit coffin could catch its breath, Yan Jiuxiao, who had a grave expression on his face, erected 2 more fire walls. Just to block this water ball, he actually had to use the 3 great divine defensive secret techniques that Lord Grandfather cultivated. This thought flashed in the flame spirit coffin's mind, but it was soon replaced by shock. The swaying water ball really penetrated 4 firewalls in a row. When the flame spirit coffin laid down the 5th firewall, the water ball, which was no different from ordinary flowing water, finally disappeared. Chapter 1391. The flame spirit coffin couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when he saw the ball of water disappear. He didn't expect a ball of water like this to be so powerful that his grandfather had to erect 5 walls of fire in order to block it. One had to know that the difference between a great technique and a peerless technique depended on who was casting it. In the flame spirit coffin's opinion, the great technique cast by his grandfather, Yan Jiuxiao, was even more powerful than his own peerless technique. But it was precisely such a powerful defensive technique that Lu Ping's water ball had pierced through 4 times in a row. If that ball of water had been poured on his head just now, the flame spirit coffin felt a lingering fear when he thought about it. He probably wouldn't even have a corpse left. Not only did Lu Ping's ball of water frighten the flame spirit coffin, it also caused Yan Jiuxiao's heart to skip a beat. This ball of water was obviously condensed by Lu Ping using a divine ability. However, Yan Jiuxiao was proficient in fire cultivation methods and divine abilities. Naturally, he had dabbled in many water cultivation methods, divine abilities, and secret arts that naturally countered his body. However, despite his 1,000 years of experience, his pure yang cultivation, and the knowledge of the Fire Phoenix clan's patriarch, he had never seen anyone who could use such a strange yet powerful water. The liquid condensed within the ball of water was definitely not any kind of high-grade heaven-ranked spirit water in this world. Even if Yan Jiuxiao refined his natal spirit water with his own cultivation, it wouldn't be able to produce such a powerful force. Yan Jiujiao's life-bound spirit fire was also extraordinary. It was the life-bound spirit fire born from his 9th-grade golden core, which was condensed from 3 types of mid-grade earth rank, low-grade heaven rank, and high-grade heaven rank heaven and earth spirit fires. Its might was far stronger than a high-grade heaven rank spirit fire. But in front of Lu Ping's ball of water, the wall of fire formed from his life-bound spirit fire was pierced through 4 times in a row. In the end, it perished together with the last wall of fire. Although Lu Ping was only testing the waters this time, he was still shocked when he saw the true power of the Triple Light's sacred water in front of him. Even though he had already imagined the power of the Triple Light's sacred water to be powerful enough, he was still shocked when it was actually displayed in front of him. Lu Ping's techniques were like an endless torrent of water. While Yan Jiuxiu was still creating 5 walls of fire to block the Triple Light's sacred water, Lu Ping had already taken advantage of the situation to attack from the other side. 3 of the 6 serpents that Mo Li had transformed into connected their heads and tails to form a larger serpent that looked more like a dragon. One of the serpents shook its head and swung its tail, activating a spatial ability as it tried to swallow Yan Jiuxiu in a single gulp. Yan Jiuxiu's expression was solemn. He had no time to recover the energy he had lost from creating 5 walls of fire in a row, so he forcefully condensed a strand of essence energy from his core space. Then, he waved his hand in front of him and a fiery red feather condensed from rich essence energy appeared in front of him. The feather then floated towards the roaring serpent, and transformed into a huge fire luan that stretched out its neck and let out a long cry, clashing with the serpent. However, even though Yan Jiuxiu barely managed to block one of the flood dragons with his life-bound plume feather, the other flood dragon soundlessly broke through the void and swiped at Yan Jiuxiu with its 2 giant claws. Left with no other choice, Yan Jiuxiu could only retreat again and again. As a result, he no longer had the mental strength to protect the flame spirit coffin behind him from the wind and rain. "Jiner, hurry up and retreat!" Yan Jiuxiu could only open his mouth to warn Yan Jiuxiu. Lu Ping's series of attacks would not be able to do anything to Yan Jiuxiu in a short period of time, but Lu Ping had never thought that he could defeat the Fire Phoenix Tribe Elder in a short period of time. His true target was the flame spirit coffin behind the Fire Phoenix Tribe Elder. The flame spirit coffin had already reacted the moment Yan Jiuxiu was forced to retreat by Lu Ping. Lu Ping had targeted him from the very beginning and had laid down layers upon layers of attacks, causing Yan Jiuxiu to be hindered at every turn. But in the end, Yan Jiuxiu was still unable to defend himself. At this time, the flame spirit coffin no longer had any thoughts of putting on a brave front. All he wanted to do was to retreat and avoid Lu Ping's meticulously planned assassination. However, Lu Ping's attacks were far faster than he had expected. Just as Yan Jiuxiu was forced to retreat, the space around him rippled, and his avatar Lu Xiaoping had once again appeared in front of the flame spirit coffin. The green willow sword was pointed straight at the flame spirit coffin's left eye. The flame spirit coffin panicked. His shoulder, which had already been pierced by the sword, had affected his ability to evade. Due to the increase in Lu Ping's level of cultivation, his avatar, which had become even more powerful, posed a threat to the flame spirit coffin that was no less than facing a practitioner who was also at the peak of the mid-Dharma stage. A burst of fire exploded in front of the flame spirit coffin. The green willow sword was ultimately affected, and it did not hit the flame spirit coffin's left eye. However, the sharp sword aura still left a line of blood on the left side of his face. However, even after avoiding Lu Ping's ambush, the flame spirit coffin still did not dare to relax. Lu Ping's attacks had always been continuous. He never pursued a one-hit kill, but because he was too powerful, his opponents were often defeated after only 1 or 2 rounds. In reality, Lu Ping's methods had always been like flowing water, pervasive and never-ending. Sure enough, after Lu Xiaoping missed this attack, the space in the direction that the flame spirit coffin had just dodged shook. The flame spirit coffin was shocked, but there was nothing in the shaking space. The flame spirit coffin was stunned at first, and then his expression changed drastically. He remembered that the person in front of him still had an extremely strange invisible sword magic, so he hurriedly turned around and dodged again. However, the flame spirit coffin's movements were too late. The blue sword aura of the tranquil water sword had already pierced through the flame spirit coffin's shield of vigor and revealed its tracks. The tip of the sword was pointing straight at the flame spirit coffin's heart. There was no way he could avoid this attack. The flame spirit coffin showed a look of despair. However, at this moment, a 7-colored light flashed across, and with a ding, the flame spirit coffin flew backward involuntarily as if he had suffered a heavy blow. In the process of flying backward, his face flashed red, and he could no longer suppress a mouthful of blood and spat it out of his mouth. Lu Ping attacked the flame spirit coffin at the same time as he repelled Yan Jiuxia. However, Yan Jiuxia was worthy of being a pure yang cultivator, and he still had time to rescue him. Lu Ping withdrew the tranquil water sword in great disappointment. Just when Lu Ping was about to kill the flame spirit coffin, Lu Ping clearly saw the seven-colored light that blocked the tranquil water sword. It was a seven-colored feather, the relic of the Luan Taoist. He did not expect this thing to be so tough. Although most of the power of the tranquil water sword was used for stealth attacks, it was still a first tribulation spiritual treasure after all. Yet, it could not damage the seven-colored feather at all. The relic of the heaven-opening relic really lived up to its name. Although Yan Jiuxiu had saved his grandson at the last moment, the flame spirit coffin was already on the verge of death after being heavily injured by Lu Ping twice in a row. It could no longer pose any threat to Lu Ping. Instead, it would cause Yan Jiuxiu to be restricted in his upcoming battle with Lu Ping. Yan Jiuxiu stood in front of the flame spirit coffin and faced Lu Ping as if he was facing a great enemy. However, Lu Ping was not to be outdone. Although Emoli was a spiritual treasure flying sword, she had transformed into a flood dragon and swam in front of Lu Ping. A white mist gradually rose in front of Lu Ping. The white mist condensed into a pool of clear water that floated in the air. The flood dragon that Emoli had transformed into was swimming freely in this pool of water. Yan Jiuxiu stared at the pool of water that had condensed in front of Lu Ping and asked in a serious voice, "This is the natal spiritual water that you condensed. The old man has never seen it before. May I know what kind of divine ability it is?" Lu Ping smiled faintly and answered, "Triple Light's divine water." "Triple Light's divine water?" A hint of confusion flashed across Yan Jiuxiao's face. He said seriously, "The old man has remembered it. It is truly miraculous. However, do you still want to continue today's battle?" Lu Ping sneered. "I have never seen myself at a disadvantage." Yan Jiuxiu was taken aback for a moment. Only then did he point above his head. A hint of mockery flashed across his eyes as he said, "The old man admits that you have the qualifications to fight against the old man. If you want to fight, even though Jiner is a burden to the old man, you better think carefully about how confident you are in avoiding the threat above your head." Lu Ping looked in the direction Yan Jiuxiu had pointed and his expression immediately changed. Only now did he realize that this was only an extremely small space in the heavenly abode. Previously, when he was trying to break the spatial seal with the flood dragon blood essence, he had been extremely careful because he was afraid that he would cause this heavenly abode to collapse and be instantly submerged by the lava lake above his head. However, during this chaotic battle, both Lu Ping and Yan Jiuxiu had used their spatial abilities multiple times. At this moment, this heavenly abode was already on the verge of collapse. If Lu Ping and Yan Jiuxiu were to fight again, this heavenly abode would definitely not be able to withstand the full power battle between two pure yang practitioners and collapse. Just as Lu Ping's expression changed, Yan Jiuxiu had already retreated. He was no longer worried that Lu Ping would intervene. He grabbed the flame spirit coffin in his hand, smiled coldly at Lu Ping, and left into the distance. As expected, Lu Ping did not try to stop them. Instead, he watched them leave. Although he already had the strength to fight against a pure yang practitioner, in his heart, he still believed that he was only a late Dharma adept. However, a battle between pure yang practitioners could cause the heavens and earth to collapse. Even in the world of cultivation, it was often necessary to use spatial abilities during battles to minimize the damage caused by the dissipation of the power of their respective abilities. How could this tiny heavenly abode before him withstand the fierce battle between the two of them? In reality, this heavenly abode was already on the verge of collapse due to the damage caused by the battle between the two. At this moment, Lu Ping could even see through the arc of the heavenly abode to the fiery red lava that was surging beneath the surface. This heavenly abode could collapse at any time. Once Yan Jiuxiao and his grandson retreated, Lu Ping also sensed the threat. However, he still wanted to search around before the heavenly abode collapsed, and see if he could find any treasures left behind. Judging from the Fire Phoenix clan's great efforts, and the Flood Dragon's blood essence that Lu Ping had obtained, this heavenly abode was definitely not to be trifled with. It could even be the treasures left behind by the seventh patriarch of heaven creation. However, he did not know that Yan Jiuxiao and his grandson had already plundered this heavenly abode clean over the past 2 days. Just as Lu Ping was about to search other places, the space above his head began to tremble. This was clearly Yan Jiuxiao's attempt to break open the heavenly abode and leave this place. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, and he thought to himself, "Oh no, I've been tricked by this old fellow." Just as this thought flashed through his mind, he heard continuous muffled sounds coming from above his head. The moment Yan Jiuxiao left the heavenly abode, he began to destroy this heavenly abode. Violent spatial tremors came from the arc of the heavenly abode, and several streams of fire descended from the sky. This heavenly abode that had been suppressed at the bottom of the lava lake was already collapsing. Chapter 1392. I've been tricked by this old bastard. At this time, how could Lu Ping care about searching for treasures? Once the lava lake above his head poured down, even if Lu Ping had the ability to protect himself in the lava lake, he couldn't guarantee that Yan Jiuxiao and his grandson wouldn't ambush him from the side. The top of the Heaven's Grotto Heaven's Arc was getting more and more shattered. As long as Yan Jiuxiao destroyed a single part of the Heaven's Grotto Heaven's space, the lava lake would be more than enough to destroy the entire Heaven's Grotto Heaven. Currently, countless waves of lava had already descended from the sky of the Heaven's Grotto Heaven, causing the temperature of the entire Heaven's Grotto Heaven to rise rapidly. At this time, Lu Ping's expression was very ugly. The thin water-flowing sword had already suffered a great deal of damage when it stirred up the lava lake to open the passage. If Lu Ping were to use the same method now, it was extremely likely that the 2 first tribulation spirit treasures artifact spirits would be annihilated, and even the spirit treasures themselves would be damaged. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and pressed it against the spine of Mo Li's sword. Rays of sword light peeled off from the sword of true spirit's body. Every time a ray of sword light was peeled off, it would transform into a tiny flood dragon that danced around Lu Ping. The palm Lu Ping pressed against the spine of the sword of true spirit glowed with a bluish-purple light. 9 sword shadows were peeled off from the sword of true spirit's body in a row. After these 9 sword shadows left the sword of true spirit's body, they began to split up one after another, and the sword shadows once again transformed into tiny flood dragons. In the end, a total of 129,600 flood dragons formed a huge ball of light with Lu Ping at the center, surrounding Lu Ping tightly. At this time, the sword of true spirit's body in Lu Ping's hand looked much dimmer. The artifact spirit, Mo Li, also looked much more illusory, as if a gust of wind would completely blow it away. Lu Ping stood in the ball of light with the sword of true spirit above his head. With a flick of his finger, a water droplet suddenly flew out from his fingertip. The moment the water droplet came into contact with the water dragon's shadow, it fused into the ball of light formed by the 129,600 sword-light dragons. Then, a layer of flickering light blue water curtains suddenly rippled from the spot where the water droplet had fused into, spreading towards the entire ball of light. The 3 light holy water that Lu Ping had condensed contained the characteristics of the Xianyuan heavy water. Just 1 drop of it could evolve into a lake. At this moment, the light curtain that this drop of 3 light holy water transformed into was just perfect for the Jiao dragon. Lu Ping's special swordsmanship that was formed by combining the heaven-opening swordsmanship and the water-seeping swordsmanship became even more powerful. Lu Ping raised his head and glanced at the heavenly grotto heaven's half-destroyed ceiling. Then, he suddenly stomped on the ground. A lotus pattern flashed, and the ball of water with the Jiao dragon swimming around Lu Ping's body turned into a huge wave that surged upwards, rushing towards the sinking magma lake above the heavenly grotto heaven. At the edge of the crater, the pale-faced flame spirit coffin stood behind Yan Jiuxiao. It stared ferociously at the magma lake that had already turned into a huge funnel, and said with a hint of excitement, "Grandfather, I'm afraid that Lu Tianping won't be able to escape this time." Yan Jiuxiao's gaze never left the rapidly sinking magma lake. He said, "Not necessarily. With Lu Tianping's strength, it won't be easy to burn him to death with this magma lake. However, this magma lake should be able to weaken him enough. When the time comes, we can take the opportunity to kill him. If he lives, he will be a scourge to our clan. He is in existence among the third-generation cultivators who can stand shoulder to shoulder with Xiao Baiyu." Yan Jiuxiao inadvertently glanced at the flame spirit coffin and said, "You should retreat first. When the time comes, there might be a huge battle that you can't participate in." The flame spirit coffin, who was originally as pale as a sheet after being heavily injured, immediately flushed red. However, he still looked extremely sick. In the end, he had no choice but to fly towards the periphery of the volcano. Yan Jiuxiao glanced at the flame spirit coffin's back and sighed softly. Immediately after, his attention was attracted by the rumbling sound coming from the depths of the sinking magma lake. Yan Jiuxiao's expression changed. The second tribulation spirit treasure, the fire spirit orb, was already hovering in the air above the volcanic crater, ready to strike. The air around Yan Jiuxiao began to boil due to the heat released by the circulation of his true essence. The dense fire spirit energy in the surroundings began to gather around Yan Jiuxiao's body, forming the vague image of a gigantic fire luan behind him. At this moment, a wave of fire that was hundreds of feet high suddenly exploded in the magma lake, and a huge ball wrapped in white mist rushed out of the exploding fire wave. At the same time, the fire spirit pearl floating above the crater of the volcano suddenly communicated with the magma lake in the crater of the volcano. 18 magma fire chains with the second tribulation spiritual treasure fire spirit pearl as the center formed a huge flame cage, sealing the huge ball of white mist that had just rushed out of the magma in the cage. Flame cage, one of the supreme divine abilities of the fire phoenix race. Now that Yan Jiuxiao was using it and borrowing the power of the magma lake, its power was countless times stronger than the flame spirit coffins. At this moment, the white mist surrounding the huge ball of white mist that rushed out of the magma lake gradually dissipated. What was revealed was a huge water ball with countless sword-light dragons swimming around it. The triple light's sacred water was indeed powerful. When Lu Ping directly charged into the magma lake, the triple light's sacred water had an extremely strong resistance against the high temperature of the magma lake. Furthermore, it could continuously generate water to offset the consumption of the triple light's sacred water by the magma lake. Because the thin water-flowing sword was already heavily damaged, Lu Ping naturally could not bear to use the spiritual treasure in his hand to block the magma lake's burning heat. Left with no choice, Lu Ping could only use his own cultivation and divine abilities to block the corrosion of the magma lake. This method consumed a lot of Lu Ping's true essence. Even with the help of the triple light's sacred water, and the seeping sword art formed from the heaven-opening swordsmanship, Lu Ping could feel as if there was a funnel in his body. The condensed true essence was rapidly draining out of his body. Yan Jiuxiao's calculations were correct. Lu Ping was indeed weakened, but he did not expect that only the true essence in Lu Ping's body was being consumed. The magma lake did not cause any real damage to Lu Ping. Moreover, the one thing that Lu Ping was least afraid of was true essence. However, Yan Jiuxiao had been accumulating power for a long time. The flame cage had already given him the upper hand. The moment Lu Ping rushed out of the magma lake, he fell into Yan Jiuxiao's trap. The 18 fire chains rapidly contracted. A huge amount of fire spirit energy flowed along the 18 fire chains and gathered towards the fire spirit pearl in the center. With a loud bang, the entire flame cage was ignited by Yan Jiuxiao's natal spirit fire. Yan Jiuxiao's natal spirit fire was not as condensed as Lu Ping's triple light's sacred water, but at this moment, he had the absolute advantage. Yan Jiuxiao did not mind going all out against Lu Ping. However, the relaxed expression on Yan Jiuxiao's face froze before it could even appear. Within the cage that was engulfed by the flames, a pure and dense pure yang energy suddenly surged. Yan Jiuxiu seemed to have thought of something in that instant. Just as a look of shock appeared on his face, two blade lights suddenly shot out from within the flames. Immediately after, the two blade lights converged towards the center. Bang! Bang! With two sounds, the two fire chains had already been cut apart. With the two fire chains cut, Yan Jiuxiao's flame cage immediately revealed an opening. The fire spirit pearl revolved in midair, attempting to repair the broken flame cage. However, a battle between experts only lasted for an instant. Naturally, Lu Ping would not let this opportunity to escape slip away from his hands. A torrent of sword light dragons broke out of the broken cage. Countless sword light dragons were annihilated by the fire spirit pearl's all-out attack, but even more sword light dragons managed to break apart the other fire chains that were trying to reseal the flame cage. The torrent of triple light's sacred water also blocked the burning of Yan Jiuxiao's natal spirit fire. A lotus slowly rose from the torrent of sword light. Lu Ping floated above the lotus, his eyes coldly staring at the startled Yan Jiuxia. At this moment, most of Yan Jiuxiao's attention was focused on the purple gold scissors in Lu Ping's hand. His eyes flashed with shock and greed as he said in a hoarse voice, pure yang spiritual treasure! Lu Ping snorted coldly. This time, he had fallen into Yan Jiuxiao's trap and had no choice but to reveal the two halves of the spiritual treasure. Right now, his entire body was filled with killing intent. With Jinling's current strength, the price he had to pay to possess a pure yang spiritual treasure was obviously unbearable. If he wanted to prevent the secret of the pure yang spiritual treasure from being leaked, there was only one path left for Lu Ping. Clang! The pure yang spiritual treasure abruptly opened above Lu Ping's head, its blade pointing straight at Yan Jiuxiao. Yan Jiuxiao panicked, but his mind was not slow. As he withdrew the fire spirit pearl, a fiery cloud rose behind him as he shouted, "This is the two halves of the spiritual treasure! The Northern Alliance's sect-guarding spiritual treasure has actually fallen into your hands. That Northern Alliance's Hanya must have died at your hands. Also, that Wishing School's plan to steal the Green Netherworld River must have been foiled by you as well. Could it be that the pure yang lightning tribulation that day at the foot of Luo Xian Mountain was summoned by this two halves of the pure yang spiritual treasure? That Yan Jiuxiao was indeed worthy of being the Fire Phoenix race's leader. The moment Lu Ping revealed the two halves of the pure yang spiritual treasure, he had already deduced everything that had happened. Yan Jiuxiao's defense had grasped Lu Ping's weak spot in an instant, and he said smugly, "Lu Tianping, how dare you! If the old man were to leak this information, do you know that you, Jinling, will be met with a calamity?" But the more Yan Jiuxiao acted like this, the more intense the killing intent in Lu Ping's body became. The mantis on Lu Ping's shoulders waved its pair of large blades and shouted, "Kill! Kill! Kill him to silence him!" The scissors abruptly closed in midair. Yan Jiuxiao was a pure yang cultivator after all, and he used all his strength to break free from the binding feeling of being targeted by a pure yang spiritual treasure. His body flashed past two blade lights that cut through the void, and the pure yang spiritual treasure immediately cut a huge hole in the volcano behind him. With a loud boom, the magma that had been suppressed by the volcano immediately found a vent, and the earth shook and mountains shook as it completely erupted. Half the sky was covered in thick volcanic ash. Lu Ping had already pounced forward with the sword of true spirit in his hand, and said coldly, "You know too much!" Chapter 1393. You know too much! Lu Ping knew what would happen if the news that he had a pure yang spiritual treasure in his possession was leaked. However, right now, he had no choice but to fight Yan Jiuxia to the death. Yan Jiuxia sneered as if victory was in his grasp. "You want to silence the old man? With just you? This is the Luan Taoist's legacy in the volcanoes of Scarlet Mist Island. It is the paradise of my fire phoenix race, and the old man is a pure yang cultivator. Lu Ping slashed out with his sword. Yan Zhixiao, who had just escaped from the pure yang spiritual treasure, could no longer dodge the aura locking of Lu Ping's sword. He had no choice but to use the fire spirit pearl in his hand to take on Lu Ping's sword. A cloud of white mist rose up and sparks sprinkled down. Lu Ping's sword of true spirit was far superior to the fire spirit pearl, and it was a natal spiritual treasure that Lu Ping had experienced two lightning tribulations at the same time. Yan Zhixiao, on the other hand, was waiting for Lu Ping to exhaust himself by relying on the geographical advantage of Scarlet Mist Island. The two of them were actually evenly matched. Lu Ping was expressionless, but Yan Zhixiao's mind was in a mess. This kid should have used up a lot of his essence energy to break through the seal of the lava lake's fire vein. Why is he still so full of energy? However, just as this thought flashed through his mind, Lu Ping had already launched another attack. This time, the moment the sword of true spirit was sent flying, a stream of water flew out of Lu Ping's hand. It transformed into a 30-meter-long water flood dragon in midair and pounced at Yan Zhixiao with its claws and fangs bared. Yan Zhixiao was a little wary of Lu Ping's triple brilliance sacred water, but the flame spirit coffin was not by his side. No matter how powerful the triple brilliance sacred water was, it could not harm Yan Zhixiao at all. At most, it would only make him spend some effort to deal with it. A clear and melodious cry of a luan rang out from the fiery cloud behind Yan Zhixiao. A cluster of clouds separated itself from the cloud, wriggling in midair for a moment before transforming into a gigantic fiery luan with a wingspan of over 100 feet. The luan pounced towards the water dragon. As soon as the two sides made contact, a series of water and fire explosions rang out. Flames and mist exploded one after another, covering an area of over 1,000 feet in radius. The fire luan was finally extinguished, but the water flood dragon was also sent flying in all directions. However, just as the two were about to be annihilated, Lu Ping's divine sense had already locked onto Yan Zhixiao's position. Without waiting for the fog to disperse, the pure yang spirit treasure struck out again. Two blade lights pierced through the fog and accurately sliced towards Yan Zhixiao's waist. Yan Zhixiao naturally did not dare to be careless in the face of a pure yang spiritual treasure. He did his best to break free from Lu Ping's aura lock. While Yan Zhixiao was dodging, two 10-meter-long fire phoenixes abruptly appeared behind him and pounced towards the two blade lights. The fire phoenixes were formed from Yan Zhixiao's fiery cloud and swooped down towards the blade lights. The moment they came into contact with the blade lights, the pure yang spiritual treasure destroyed their feathers. However, the two blade lights were involuntarily pushed down by the two spirit birds. The tip of another volcano behind the flame spirit coffin was cut off by the blade lights. The lava that was being nurtured in the belly of the volcano immediately erupted. Yet another volcano erupted, causing the fire spirit energy of the entire Scarlet Mist Island to become turbulent once more. When Yan Zhixiao saw that Lu Tianping did not seem to realize that he had conveniently laid down a trap, Yan Zhixiao sneered and pointed at the fire spirit pearl above his head. The dense fire spirit energy in the surroundings was immediately drawn in by the pearl, and a flaming feather flew out from the Dharma image's auspicious cloud behind him and merged into the fire spirit pearl. The mountain of lava that was suspended in midair immediately smashed down from the thick scarlet volcanic ash, as if it was raining fire. Yan Zhixiao's second life plume feather contained a peerless divine ability, Meteor Shower. Borrowing the power of Scarlet Mist Island's volcano, the power of this peerless divine ability had increased by more than 30 to 20%. Lu Ping looked towards the sky with a serious expression. The meteor fire rain that covered a large portion of the sky came crashing down with the force of a thunderbolt. It gave off a feeling that there was no way to avoid it, as if the end of the world was coming. Lu Ping was still fearless. A ray of water flowed across the surface of the cloud sail and floated up. Countless fiery rains smashed into the auspicious cloud formed by the cloud sail and disappeared without a trace. However, the cloud sail was not a complete defensive spiritual treasure. Even if it could completely block the all-out supreme ability of a pure yang cultivator, it would probably suffer heavy injuries like the thin water-flowing sword from before. Lu Ping seemed to have realized that he didn't have much of an advantage at this moment. He used the pure yang scissors and the sword of true spirit more and more frequently, trying to force Yan Jiuxiao to fight head-on with his spiritual treasures. However, Yan Jiuxiao was very experienced. He was able to break free from the combined attacks of the two spiritual treasures every single time and avoid Lu Ping's direct attacks. Despite this, Lu Ping seemed to have gained the upper hand in the battle. He continued to chase after Yan Jiuxiao above Scarlet Mist Island. Although every time he chased after Yan Jiuxiao, he couldn't hurt him in the slightest. On the contrary, Lu Ping was able to withstand Yan Jiuxiao's attacks head-on. The cloud formed by the Hangyan's sail was growing thinner and thinner. Rumble! Another earth-shattering boom rang out. Lu Ping, who seemed to have gone berserk from killing, once again used the pure yang scissors to kill Yan Jiuxiao. Not only did he fail to hit his target, he even managed to cut a hole in a volcano. Magma and rocks erupted from the belly of the volcano, nearly drowning the oncoming Lu Ping within it. Whenever Yan Jiuxiao dodged the dual attacks of the pure yang scissors and the sword of true spirit, Lu Ping would use the triple brilliance sacred water as a medium to unleash all sorts of water-type abilities to block Yan Jiuxiao's path of escape. However, Yan Jiuxiao, who had the geographical advantage, would always be able to easily defeat or evade his attacks. When the two mutually restraining abilities clashed, they would often form a huge phenomenon, which in turn gave Yan Jiuxiao the perfect opportunity to escape from Lu Ping's pursuit. This Lu Tianping had truly lost his mind from all the fighting. What was the point of charging and attacking blindly? However, it seemed that Lu Ping really valued that pure yang scissors in his hands. Since that was the case, the old man would just have to take it for himself as well. Not only did Yan Jiuxiao not look the least bit flustered while being chased by Lu Ping, he even felt relaxed, as if he still had a trump card that would ensure his victory. This was already the 9th volcano that Lu Ping had pierced through with his pure yang scissors. Together with the magma lake that contained the entire Scarlet Mist Island's fire vein, Lu Ping had unknowingly made a large circle around the mouth of the magma lake under Yan Jiuxiao's guidance. The 9 volcanoes that Lu Ping had destroyed just so happened to form a circle around the mouth of the magma lake. Ha ha! After dodging Lu Ping's pure yang scissors, the sword of true spirit, and the triple brilliance divine water, Yan Jiuxiao suddenly let out a hearty laugh. At this moment, Lu Ping was like a gambler who had lost so much that his eyes had turned red. Instead, he appeared to be in an exceptionally sorry state. Hearing Yan Jiuxiao's laughter, he suddenly froze, and said fiercely, "What are you laughing at, old man?" Yan Jiuxiao pointed at Lu Ping and laughed loudly. "Lu Tianping, the old man admits that your cultivation and strength are truly something that the old man has never seen before. You are able to control a pure yang scissors with such ease, and with your true essence. I believe that even Xiao Baiyu was not inferior to you when his cultivation was at the same level as yours back then. Even the old man had to admit that he was inferior to you. However, of all the things that you shouldn't have done, you shouldn't have tried to use a pure yang scissors to silence the old man on this Scarlet Mist Island." The pure yang scissors closed, and another blade light intersected. Yan Jiuxiao retreated, and at the same time, he continued, "The old man once said that this Scarlet Mist Island is the legacy of the Wan Taoist, the paradise of our Fire Phoenix race. The old man has the geographical advantage here, and he has long been in an invincible position. What can you do to the old man?" Taking advantage of Yan Jiuxiao's retreat, Lu Ping's sword of true spirit broke through the void with a flying chain slash in an attempt to kill the Fire Phoenix race patriarch. Lu Ping shouted harshly, "What can you do to me?" This time, the Fire Phoenix race patriarch couldn't dodge in time, but he also had a second tribulation divine artifact in his hand. A small Fire Phoenix spirit bird flew out from the Fire Spirit Pearl, growing in size with the wind. A 10-meter-long Fire Phoenix stretched its sharp claws towards the void, and clashed with the sword of true spirit's sword light. A shrill cry rang through the air. The fire phoenix spirit bird's claws were sliced apart by the sword of true spirit, and the flying chain/slash's sword light was also broken by Yan Jiuxiao. A feather once again flew out from the roiling cloud behind Yan Jiuxiao's back and fell into his palm. Yan Jiuxiao smiled smugly and said, "Lu Tianping, do you know of the burning heavens inferno?" Lu Ping's expression changed. He immediately realized that Yan Jiuxiao had caused several volcanoes to erupt one after another just now. Could it be related to this? However, even though Lu Ping's expression changed, he still said, "Our sect also has cultivators who practice the supreme divine ability Burning Heaven's Inferno. Could it be that the Fire Phoenix Race Patriarch is planning to use this divine ability against me? Could it be that the Fire Phoenix Race Patriarch's natal spirit fire is related to the Mother-Child Earth Flame? Even if that's the case, this supreme divine ability might not be able to do anything to me." The two of them did not stop even as they spoke. On the contrary, Lu Ping seemed to have sensed that something was wrong, and his attacks became even more vicious. Even though Yan Jiuxiao appeared to be in a rather sorry state as he kept dodging, he still said smugly, "Fool! Everyone knows that this Burning Heaven's Inferno can only be used with the Mother-Child Earth Flame as a medium, but they don't know that this divine ability was bestowed upon my Fire Phoenix race by the Luan Taoist. Only by using the Mother-Child Earth Flame as a medium can it be powerful. Today, this old man will let you witness the true Burning Heaven's Inferno, so that you, Sword Immortal of the North Sea Water, can die knowing the truth." As he spoke, the Fire Phoenix Race Patriarch was already hovering in the air above the magma lake. She no longer dodged Lu Ping's attacks. Instead, she took the true spirit sword head-on and threw the fire spirit orb in her hand into the magma lake beneath her feet. Her face was abnormally red from excitement, and her hands instantly formed several hundred strange hand seals. Then she fiercely pressed them down and shouted, "Burning Heaven's Inferno, rise!" The entire Scarlet Mist Island was shaking. By this time, Lu Ping had already sensed that the situation was far from good. He tried to step forward and interrupt Yan Jiuxiao's technique, but just as Yan Jiuxiao was shouting, the magma lake beneath his feet suddenly erupted. Lu Ping hastily dodged, but discovered that the 9 volcanoes that Lu Ping had pierced through with the magma lake were also erupting at the same time. In an instant, the 9 erupting volcanoes, scarlet magma, burning flint, and thick volcanic ash formed a giant prison of flames in the sky above Scarlet Mist Island. At this moment, Lu Ping was the only person trapped in this prison. Several dozen feet away, Yan Jiuxiao's laughter carried a trace of madness. "This is the Burning Heaven's Inferno! This is the true Burning Heaven's Inferno! Lu Tianping, if you don't die now, then when?" Chapter 1394. The Fire Phoenix Clan Master, Yan Jiuxiao, took advantage of Lu Ping's frenzied pursuit to form a huge array formation around the magma lake where the living spirit veins converged. It was none other than the sky-burning inferno array formation. The Fire Phoenix Clan Master, Yan Jiuxiao, took advantage of Lu Ping's frenzied pursuit to form a massive array formation around the magma lake. In the cultivation world, this was a peerless fire divine ability that could only be cultivated through the Mother-Child Earth Flame. However, the Fire Phoenix clan actually had another way to cultivate and use it. This unique inheritance method of the Fire Phoenix clan was obviously to transform the Grand Inferno Burning Heaven formation into a gigantic formation. Its power was greater, its area of effect was wider, and its control was naturally more complicated. That was why Yan Jiuxia had racked his brains to make use of Lu Ping's pursuit to destroy the 9 volcanoes in succession. At this moment, Lu Ping was trapped in such a gigantic formation by Yan Jiuxiao. In Yan Jiuxiao's eyes, the current Lu Ping was already a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. What a grand plan! For the Fire Phoenix clan's patriarch to create such a huge formation just to deal with me, I, Lu Ping, am truly overwhelmed by your favor. Lu Ping's faint smile and deep emotion caused the Fire Phoenix clan's patriarch to feel extremely uneasy. This was not the expression a person who was in a desperate situation should have. Although Yan Jiuxia had some misgivings in his heart, now that the Grand Inferno Burning Heaven formation had been completed, he believed that he was already in an invincible position. There was absolutely no reason for him to retreat now. He could only be certain that Lu Ping was just putting on a show. That's right, he was definitely putting on a show, and could even be stalling for time. When they first met on Scarlet Mist Island, Lu Tianping still had cultivators from the same sect by his side. Those people must have already returned to ask for help. Although Jinling didn't care about anyone other than Lu Tianping, there were still 2 great cultivators who would be troublesome if they rushed over. Thinking of this, Yan Jiuxiao made a prompt decision. He clasped his hands together from the outside to the inside, and everything within the range of the Grand Inferno Burning Heaven formation turned into a sea of fire. Moreover, this sea of fire was different from ordinary fire. It was a fire seed formed from the entire Scarlet Mist Island's fire vein, and its power even surpassed that of a heaven-rank spirit fire. Moreover, with the fire vein's support, the sea of fire would be endless. No matter how high one's cultivation was, it would still be able to exhaust them. The so-called Inferno Burning Heaven formation originally wanted the trapped person to experience pain and torment until they died. If the person was burned to death right from the start, then it couldn't be called a prison. Just as the array formation turned into a hell of fire, Lu Ping activated his defensive skill and repelled the raging fire waves to a distance of 30 feet away from him. However, the countless sparks of fire licked at Lu Ping's purple-gold protective energy, the heavenly water curtain. It sizzled as if cold water had been poured into a pot of boiling oil. The heavenly water curtain flickered, as if it would extinguish at any moment. It was all thanks to Lu Ping's true essence that he managed to hold on. Yan Jiuxiao sneered. Lu Tianping, the old man admits that you have a profound cultivation and great strength. The fact that you were able to hold on until now despite being burned by the Inferno Burning Heaven formation shows that your true essence is so strong that it is the first time the old man has seen in his life. But so what? You're only struggling at death's door. Instead, it will make the old man appreciate the painful journey from life to death, haha. Because Lu Ping was circulating the true essence in his body with all his strength, his entire body looked like it was covered in a layer of purple-blue mist. Hearing Yan Jiuxiao's mocking words, Lu Ping suddenly raised his head and looked at Yan Jiuxiao, saying seriously, "It's too early for you to be happy." "What?" Yan Jiuxiao's laughter came to an abrupt halt. But then, as if he had heard something funny, he said, "You should think about what last words you have left behind first." At this time, because Lu Ping was using all his strength to support the water curtain heaven flower and delay the corrosion of his protective aura, he had already covered it with the triple light's divine water. However, it could only prolong his time for a little longer. But Lu Ping was still unhurried. He spread his hands and formed a hand seal. A white feather lotus diagram abruptly appeared on the surface of his tottering protective aura, stabilizing it once more under the burning of the Inferno prison. Only then did he speak in a leisurely manner. "Do you really think that I, Lu, will be forced to the point of losing my rationality and be used by you like a marionette to lay down this Inferno Burning Heaven formation?" Yan Jiuxiao's heart sank. He said coldly, "Is that not the case?" Although Yan Jiuxiao was confident in the Inferno Burning Heaven formation, Lu Ping's calm expression still gave him goosebumps. Seeing Lu Ping's endless methods, a sinister look flashed across Yan Jiuxiao's face. He said, "Since you want to die early, then the old man will fulfill your wish. Fire Phoenix Avatar, appear!" The auspicious cloud behind Yan Jiuxiao suddenly let out a bird cry that resounded through the entire universe. The auspicious cloud transformed, and a blazing scarlet flame stretched out from the void. A majestic fire phoenix emerged from the void, flapping its wings and flying along the path opened up by the flame. This fire phoenix was covered in scarlet flames from head to toe, as if it was a spirit of fire. It was Yan Jiuxiao's pure yang avatar. The moment Yan Jiuxiao summoned the avatar, the entire heaven-burning Inferno Grand Array formation transformed into a huge furnace, and Lu Ping was the only target to be refined within it. The moment the avatar appeared, Yan Jiuxiao's confidence soared. But when he looked at Lu Ping again, he discovered that Lu Ping was also looking at him with a strange smile. The moment the Fire Phoenix avatar appeared, Lu Ping raised his hands, as if he wanted to lift something extremely heavy. He shouted in a low voice, "Now is the time! Genshin formation, rise!" Yan Jiuxiao was stunned. He saw 9 blue halos suddenly flash from the foot of the volcanoes that served as the foundation of the Inferno Burning Heaven formation. The Inferno Burning Heaven formation had long since been submerged in the sea of fire, and there was nothing else besides the scarlet flames. But these 9 blue halos had forcefully carved out a place in the sea of fire. Although the sea of fire was roiling on its own in an attempt to devour these 9 translucent halos, only the sound of explosions could be heard coming from the center of the formation. Moreover, the 9 halos had not been extinguished even under the encirclement of the sea of fire. Yan Jiuxiao's expression changed, and he blurted out, "A formation within a formation! Not good! When did you set up this formation?" Lu Ping chuckled coldly. "Yan Jiuxiao, you used this Lu to destroy the foundation of the formation formed by the 9 volcanoes. How do you know that this Lu isn't also using you to weave a net in secret, to capture you in one fell swoop?" As he said this, Lu Ping stretched out a hand and beckoned towards the air. 3 translucent halos suddenly flashed from different directions on the protective wall of the formation that was originally formed by fire and scarlet mist. These halos resonated with the halos at the foot of the 9 volcanoes, and the 12 halos formed a general outline that perfectly enveloped both Lu Ping and Yan Jiuxiao. Yan Jiuxiao suddenly recalled the time when Lu Ping was madly chasing after him. Every time Lu Ping used the pure Yang spirit treasure and the Sword of True Spirit to force him into a corner, Lu Ping would always use a divine ability formed from his natal spirit water to block his path of retreat. Although the divine ability formed from the natal spirit water wasn't weak, it was clearly far from the power displayed by the 2 spirit treasures. Originally, Yan Jiuxiao had thought that Lu Ping's actions were merely a helpless move because his true essence was insufficient after using 2 spirit treasures in a row. But now, it seemed that Lu Ping's superfluous actions that seemed to have been filled with bloodlust were clearly a hidden killer move. Unfortunately, he had been so carried away by his own success that he had overlooked it. A trace of regret flashed through his heart, but his expression grew even more sinister as he said, "So what? If you want to set up a formation within a formation, you'll have to see if this formation of yours can withstand the burning heaven fire prison." Although Yan Jiuxiao's words were tyrannical, the moment Lu Ping summoned the 12 Genshin Grand Formation, Yan Jiuxiao had already controlled his avatar in an attempt to break through the 12 Genshin Grand Formation's barrier and regain control of the burning heaven fire prison. However, Lu Ping had schemed for a very long time and had even placed himself in a dangerous situation. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but once he did, he would definitely succeed in killing Yan Jiuxiao. How could he allow Yan Jiuxiao to escape from the Genshin Grand Formation's control? Just as the pure Yang avatar began to attack the Genshin Grand Formation, the protective divine ability around Lu Ping's body suddenly collapsed. The white lotus diagram that was attached to the heavenly water curtain spread out like flowing water beneath Lu Ping's feet, suppressing the sea of fire beneath his feet in one fell swoop. At the same time, the 12 gentian pearls that had been soaked in the triple light's divine water flickered with a brilliant 5-colored light, temporarily suppressing the sea of fire around them. Every single gentian pearl shot out 12 5-colored rays of light that connected the other 11 gentian pearls and the white lotus diagram. Then, a 5-colored curtain of light began to spread along the 5-colored rays of light that connected the diagram to the gentian pearls, forming a huge 5-colored space within the burning heaven fire prison, completely isolating it from the burning heaven fire prison. The 12 gentian grand formation, complete. In the blink of an eye, the instant the primal hour grand formation was completely formed within the burning heaven hellfire grand formation, Yan Jiuxiao, along with the might of his pure yang avatar, smashed into the five-colored barrier of light of the grand formation. How could the might of a pure yang avatar be underestimated? The Gentian grand formation shook violently, and Lu Ping's complexion suddenly turned purple. After fighting multiple battles and resisting the attacks of the burning heaven fire prison, the Gentian grand formation that had been painstakingly formed was now under the full force of Yan Jiuxiao's attack. Even someone as strong as Lu Ping was powerless to stop it, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as the Gentian grand formation shook violently. But in the end, the Gentian grand formation still managed to withstand the impact of the Fire Phoenix avatar. The 12 Gentian Grand Formation was a life-bound formation that Lu Ping had been cultivating ever since he was in the blood condensation realm. How could 200 years of painstaking effort go to waste? With Yan Jiuxiao's foresight, he naturally knew that the Grand Formation in front of him was extraordinary. That was why the attack of the pure Yang avatar just now could be considered his full strength, but it had still failed. Yan Jiuxiao panicked. Based on his experience, if he couldn't break through this grand formation in the first place, he would have already fallen into Lu Ping's trap. Right now, he could only do his best to resist the attacks of the Gentian grand formation that Lu Ping was controlling to buy time, so that the burning heaven fire prison formation could completely destroy this formation within the formation from the outside. Yan Jiuxiao was confident that the might of the burning heaven fire prison formation that Luan Daoist had passed down to his descendants was definitely above Lu Ping's Gentian Grand Formation. After all, the burning heaven fire prison formation borrowed the power of heaven and earth, while this five-colored space in front of him was laid down by Lu Ping alone. It was still possible for him to last inside the burning heaven fire prison formation for a period of time, but as time passed, he would definitely be refined by the burning heaven fire prison formation. But the crux of the problem was whether Yan Jiuxiu could last until the Gentian Grand Formation collapsed. It was a good thing that Lu Ping had endured the power of the burning heaven fire prison formation to lay down this formation within a formation, so much so that he had already suffered internal injuries. However, when he thought of how ferocious Lu Ping had been when he had chased after him with a pure yang spiritual treasure and the sword of true spirit, even the dignified Fire Phoenix clan leader felt his heart pound. Right now, the Gentian Grand Formation did not have as much space to dodge as the sky above Scarlet Mist Island. At this time, Yan Jiuxiu could only brace himself and attack Lu Ping first, hoping that he could seize the initiative. If he could seize the opportunity when Lu Ping was injured and heavily injure him, then this Gentian Grand Formation would naturally collapse on its own. However, what Yan Jiuxiu did not know was that Lu Ping had not only laid down this Gentian Grand Formation to isolate him from the burning heaven fire prison formation. As the strongest technique that Lu Ping had cultivated for more than 200 years and had never casually revealed, how could he only have this little trick up his sleeves? Just as Yan Jiuxiao mustered all his remaining courage and charged towards Lu Ping, who was still bleeding from the corner of his mouth, suddenly smiled. It was a complacent smile. Yan Jiuxiao's heart skipped a beat. The Fire Phoenix avatar that was charging towards Lu Ping was about to withdraw and defend itself, but since he had already made his move, he could not afford to hesitate any longer. He could only hope that the pure Yang avatar's power could completely break through the limits that Lu Ping could endure. But in the end, this was only Yan Jiuxiao's wishful thinking. Lu Ping fiercely clenched his open palm and spat out two words one at a time. Overturn the heavens! The five-colored space immediately fell into chaos. The pure Yang avatar that was originally charging towards Lu Ping was now getting further and further away from Lu Ping. At the same time, the tyrannical power of space tore at the Fire Phoenix avatar from all directions, and at the same time, it also tore at Yan Jiuxiao's physical body that was possessed by the pure Yang avatar. Yan Jiuxiao suddenly discovered that within this Gentian Grand Formation, not only was he losing control of his own body, he was also losing the ability to capture Lu Ping's figure. Just as Yan Jiuxiao was panicking, Lu Ping suddenly appeared beside him, the swords of true spirit transforming into 6 flood dragons that pounced towards his body. Yan Jiuxiao let out a loud roar and the fire phoenix avatar flapped its wings, instantly breaking free from the spatial tearing power of the Genshin Grand Formation. It also calmed the spatial fluctuations within a radius of several tens of feet around its body. But at this time, the 6 flood dragons had already pounced towards it, clashing with the pure Yang avatar. However, the fire phoenix was still a pure Yang avatar after all, so even though the 6 flood dragons were formed from the swords of true spirit, they were still at a disadvantage. Yan Jiuxiu swept his eyes across the area and discovered that Lu Ping had once again disappeared without him noticing. Inwardly cursing, he immediately discovered that Lu Ping had already appeared several tens of feet away from him. Purple-gold auspicious clouds rose behind him, and a strange flood dragon that carried an ancient aura suddenly stretched out its golden claws from within the auspicious clouds. Then, its entire body broke through the obstruction of the avatar's auspicious clouds, and a loud roar that shook even Yan Jiuxiao's consciousness rang out. The strange flood dragon avatar had already disappeared into the void, and when it reappeared, it had already joined the battle with the pure Yang fire phoenix, suppressing the life spirit fire attached to the pure Yang avatar in one fell swoop. Yan Jiuxiu finally revealed a look of shock, but he saw that Lu Ping had already taken out a pure Yang spirit artifact. Yan Jiuxiu wanted to block again, but in order to set up the Inferno Heaven Burning Inferno formation, the second Tribulation Spirit artifact, the Fire Spirit Orb, had already fallen into the lava lake as the foundation of the formation. 2 blade lights cut through the air, and Yan Jiuxiu could no longer suppress the despair in his heart. Amidst his howls, he unleashed countless techniques and divine abilities, regardless of their power, but they all exploded into spiritual energy that filled the sky under the power of the scissors. A rain of blood rained down, and inside Genshin Grand Formation, the fire phoenix that was fighting with the dragon avatar let out a long, mournful cry. Chapter 1395. Volcanic eruptions on Scarlet Mist Island could be said to occur every day. However, to be able to cause the entire island to shake like the earth and mountains, this kind of movement seemed to have never happened before, except when Scarlet Mist Island emerged from the sea. Moreover, at this time, there was an unprecedented huge celestial phenomenon forming in the sky above Scarlet Mist Island. As the magma and fire stones danced in the sky, a huge cage was formed above the entire Scarlet Mist Island. The fire spiritual energy that filled the entire Scarlet Mist Island was swept away the moment the cage was formed. The drastic change on Scarlet Mist Island attracted the attention of all the nearby practitioners in an instant. The Fire Phoenix clan and the various sects of the North Sea began to retreat at the same time. As for the Junling practitioners who had already withdrawn from the battle, they were now gathered on the treasure ship, looking worriedly at the rising celestial phenomenon on the island. This is a volcanic eruption? After all, Tianchan Laozu's foresight was a notch lower. He thought that it was just a series of coincidental volcanic eruptions on Scarlet Mist Island that formed such a huge celestial phenomenon. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's expression was solemn as he said, "No, this is a man-made fire formation. It seems to be a formation evolved from a supreme magical power." Jiang Tianlin's words made everyone's heart sink. Lu Ping practiced a pure water-based technique, so this formation that had triggered such a huge celestial phenomenon was naturally targeted at Lu Ping. Such a powerful formation could trigger the power of heaven and earth, and its power could be said to be earth-shattering. It must have been done by the pure Yang Laozu Yan Jiuxiu himself. How could Lu Ping, who had just advanced to the late Dharma stage, survive in the face of such power? None of the Junling people dared to think further, but at this time, everyone's expression was not good. After a depressing silence, Tianqin Laozu suddenly said, "It seems to be a transformation of the supreme magical flame cage." "No!" Tianchan Laozu's expression was extremely ugly at this time. "It's not a flame cage, it's a flaming hell that burns the heavens." "A flaming hell that burns the heavens?" A trace of doubt flashed across Jiang Tianlin's face as he said, The mother-child geocentric fire can attract such power of heaven and earth? Tianqing Laozu's face was also filled with confusion, but he still said, "It does seem more like the Inferno Heaven Burning Inferno. Could it be that the Fire Phoenix race has mastered other secret techniques to execute the Inferno Heaven Burning Inferno?" Xianglu Laozu, who was standing on the treasure ship with a gloomy expression, said anxiously, "Should we rescue him? After all, he is a pure yang cultivator. If Marshal Nephew Lu is trapped by such a formation, he will be in danger." Jiang Tianlin suddenly stretched out his hand and made a grabbing motion. A spatial fluctuation came from dozens of feet away from the treasure ship. Yin Tianchu staggered back to the treasure ship. Jiang Tianlin said solemnly, "Now is not the time to go to Scarlet Mist Island." Yin Tianchu said coldly, "I'm not going." "Go kill them," Tianqin said sternly. "Murder? Kill who? A cultivator from the Fire Phoenix race? Right now, both sides have just stopped fighting. The Fire Phoenix race must be heavily guarded, and there are two great cultivators in charge. Although your assassination technique is exquisite, you want to die after killing one or two?" Yin Tianchu's face turned red, but he still stayed on the treasure ship. However, he turned around and went into the secret room of the ship. A weak voice with a trace of apprehension suddenly sounded. Why don't you save Senior Marshal Brother Lu? Senior Marshal Brother Lu is in danger." Tianqin's cold gaze suddenly swept over, and a figure involuntarily hid behind Jiang Tianlin. The frost on Tianqin's face immediately disappeared. Jiang Tianxian was 60% afraid, 30% puzzled, and 10% inexplicable intimacy as she secretly looked at Tianqin. Jiang Tianlin saw that the cold Tianqin was also shocked when she looked at his daughter. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He touched his daughter's head and said, "If even your Senior Marshal Brother Lu is in danger, everyone on this treasure ship will die for nothing." Jiang Tianxian obviously didn't believe it. She asked in a low voice with surprise, "Is Ninth Senior Marshal Brother more powerful than Father?" Jiang Tianxian instinctively wanted to ask in a low voice, but no one here had sharp ears and eyes. Tianqin and the other second-generation disciples, or Yin Tianchu and the others, naturally had a clear idea of who was stronger and who was weaker. However, people like Ma Yu and Zhong Jian had no idea what level Lu Ping's cultivation had reached, let alone the other core forging adepts on the treasure ship who were also watching. Although Jiang Tianlin had revealed a lot of information in his words, it was naturally not as direct as Jiang Tianlin saying it himself. Jiang Tianlin laughed bitterly, but he didn't hide this matter. He said directly, "Amazing, he is comparable to a pure yang cultivator." There was a gasp on the treasure ship, followed by uncontrollable excitement. Their own sect actually had a practitioner comparable to a pure yang cultivator. This was a great boost to the morale of everyone in the Jinling sect. Comparable to a pure yang cultivator, after all, was still a level lower than a real pure yang cultivator. But so what? Don't forget that Tianping Laozu himself was a great adept at the late Dharma stage. Jiang Tianlin's words spread throughout the treasure ship in an instant. Jiang Tianxian learned from her father that Ninth Senior Marshal Brother should not be in danger, so she happily followed Zhong Jian and Ma Yu back to the secret cabin. Tianqing, Laozu and the others also left, leaving only Mei Tianqin and Jiang Tianlin on the deck. "Actually, you don't have to say it so clearly," Jiang Tianlin smiled and said. "This matter can't be hidden, so it's better to use it to boost the morale of the disciples. Moreover, this is the truth. What's the use of these empty titles at such an old age? Moreover, being surpassed by one's own juniors is the proudest thing as a teacher. Xuan Xuan's mind is still that of a child's. I know, back then. I'm sorry. All these years, thank you. The past is the past, there's no need to mention it. If you really want to pursue this matter, you should say these words of apology and gratitude to Tianling. We all owe her. Yes, we owe her." Mei Tianqin's expression changed, and it seemed that she wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. However, Jiang Tianlin had already turned around and entered the treasure ship. Closely monitor the central area of Scarlet Mist Island, and be ready to receive Marshal Nephew Tianping at any time. Mei Tianqin looked at Jiang Tianlin's back, and her wriggling lips finally turned into two words. Okay. At the edge of the central area of Scarlet Mist Island, the flame spirit coffin, whose face was pale due to excessive blood loss, looked at the huge celestial phenomenon in front of it anxiously and excitedly. It muttered to itself, "This is the sky-burning inferno formation." Lu Tianping actually forced grandfather to use the sky-burning inferno formation. This is the inheritance left by Luan Daoist to the Fire Phoenix clan. Lu Tianping will definitely die. Really? Who told you that? A hoarse voice suddenly sounded in the flame spirit coffin's ear. The flame spirit coffin's eyes widened in disbelief, and it wanted to escape without thinking. However, the moment this voice sounded, a ray of light suddenly broke through the red fog wall and flashed toward the flame spirit coffin. The fog wall behind it slowly took on the shape of a jet. The flame spirit coffin shouted, and a flaming saber more than 30 meters long condensed in front of it. It slashed at the light, but unexpectedly it slashed the air. The flame spirit coffin's face was full of fear. It slowly lowered its head to look at its chest, but it didn't know when a big hole had appeared in its chest. It opened its mouth, but there was only a hee-hee sound left in its mouth. The loss of vitality caused its eyes to gradually lose color, and it finally fell backwards slowly. Another ray of light broke through the wall of fire mist in front of him and paused for a moment above the corpse of the flame spirit coffin, looting all the storage artifacts on it. Then, with a gentle push, the corpse was sent into the flowing magma and turned into ashes. I was careless. I didn't expect to suffer such a big loss at the last moment. Lu Ping's heart was filled with hatred. Lu Ping calculated in every way possible. Finally, after summoning the 12 Genshin formation to trap Yan Zhuoxiao, and then using the pure Yang spiritual treasure to kill Yan Zhuoxiao's physical body, Lu Ping believed that Yan Zhuoxiao was already 99% dead. Even if he had the pure Yang Dharma form, he could still take over Yan Zhuoxiao's body and be reborn. However, where could he escape to now inside the Genshin formation? However, what Lu Ping did not know was that the pure Yang Dharma form that had survived its third lightning tribulation was vastly different from other Dharma idols. Without the support of a physical body, the other Dharma idols would only have the ability to escape even if they had a cultivator's divine sense attached to them. However, the pure Yang Dharma form had already completely absorbed the pure Yang energy. Without the support of a physical body, not only did the pure Yang Dharma form not weaken, it even took the opportunity to launch a counterattack, intending to perish together with Lu Ping. After killing Yan Zhuoxiao, Lu Ping was already mentally and physically exhausted, so he could not help but relax a little. In that split second, the pure Yang Fire Phoenix Dharma form ignored the pincer attack from the Sword of True Spirit and the Dragon Dharma form, and its entire body turned into a ball of intense flames as it charged towards Lu Ping. The Fire Phoenix Dharma form was about to self-destruct. This time, Lu Ping's expression changed in fright. Already an arrow at the end of its flight, Lu Ping had no choice but to forcefully activate the Genshin formation once more. The entire space flipped, instantly distancing itself from the pure Yang Dharma form. Meanwhile, Lu Ping's internal organs were shaken, and his injuries worsened once more. At the same time, the Dragon Dharma form let out a roar and pounced on the pure Yang Dharma form. It bit the Fire Phoenix's neck and tore its head off its body. Emily was not to be outdone either. She pierced the pure Yang Dharma form's body with her sword, and a ball of flowing fire immediately gushed out from within. After doing all that, Lu Ping forcefully activated the Genshin formation once more. After separating the Dragon Dharma form and the Sword of True Spirit from the pure Yang Dharma form, he suddenly retracted the Genshin formation to protect himself. Meanwhile, the broken Fire Phoenix Dharma form had already been expelled into the Sea of Fire within the Genshin formation. With a muffled boom, the broken pure Yan Dharma form turned into a gigantic fireball, instantly merging completely with the sea of fire. Almost at the same time, Lu Ping also retracted the 12 gentian pearls, which were in imminent danger under the scorching heat of the inferno heaven burning formation. However, even though the pure Yan Dharma form's self-destruction had been weakened by the Dragon Dharma form and Mo Li's destruction, its power had instantly triggered the Inferno Heaven burning formation, and it had almost completely destroyed the Gentian formation. Fortunately, Lu Ping had been alert and had retracted the Gentian pearls at the last moment to defend himself. Only then was he able to withstand the turbulence of the Sea of Fire. Although Yan Jiuxiu had died, there was still someone who knew what had happened in the inheritance space. Fortunately, the flame spirit coffin was clearly very confident in his grandfather, and the Inferno Heaven burning formation, so he did not leave just like that. Naturally, Lu Ping would not let him leave alive. Chapter 1396. As the Junling cultivators cried out in alarm, the ray of light finally broke through the protective shield of the ship and landed on the deck. A man covered in blood and burns stumbled a few steps, barely managing to steady himself with the help of the ship's railing. Then, he sat down on the deck with his back against the wall. "It's Tianping Laozu!" everyone exclaimed. Obviously, they didn't expect the person in front of them to be the famous water sword deity of their sect. Jiang Tianlin, Mei Tianqin, and the others had already rushed to the deck when Lu Ping could no longer maintain the ray of light. Seeing Lu Ping in such a state, they all panicked. Jiang Tianlin walked to Lu Ping in 2 steps and patted Lu Ping's shoulder. A vast life force was injected into Lu Ping's body along with his inner yuan. He said in a low voice, "How is it?" Lu Ping forced a smile and said, "Yan Jiuxiao is dead. Get ready! The leader of the Fire Phoenix clan, Yan Jiuxiao, is dead. Chunyang Laozu is dead." Before everyone could react to this heavy news, Lu Ping had already returned to the secret room of the ship, surrounded by Jiang Tianlin and the others. With a boom, the whispers of the Junling cultivators on the ship suddenly turned into cheers. How did Yan Jiuxiao die? Who killed him? Could it be that he died at the hands of water sword deity Lu Tianping Laozu? Just as everyone in Junling was discussing this, a few Junling Dharma deities, Laozu, appeared to quell everyone's speculations and forbid the news from leaking. At the same time, beams of light rose from the treasured ship one after another. A few Junling sect's Dharma adepts led their own core forging disciples into Scarlet Mist Island to expand Junling sect's territory. At the same time, the news of Yan Jiuxiao's death had also reached Tianling Mountain, and sect leader Lu Tianling would most likely send reinforcements soon. In the secret room of the ship, Jiang Tianlin and Mei Tianqin were sitting opposite Lu Ping. Because this matter was of great importance, especially the news of Yan Jiuxiao's death, no one except Junling knew about it. It was time to seize the initiative, so Lu Ping didn't go into seclusion to heal his injuries. Instead, he swallowed a few top-grade healing pills and forced himself to discuss with Jiang Tianlin and Mei Tianqin about how to deal with the aftermath. Lu Ping briefly explained the process of his fight with Yan Jiuxiao, but to the two of them, it was still thrilling. When they heard that Yan Jiuxiao's goal was Luan Daoist's inheritance, they both cried out in shock. When Lu Ping admitted that Yan Jiuxiao had indeed died at his hands, even though the two of them were prepared, they still couldn't suppress the disbelief on their faces. After a long while, Jiang Tianlin came back to his senses and said, "We've already sent out our disciples. This time, we should be able to take over half of Scarlet Mist Island's territory before the Fire Phoenix tribe and the other sects of the North Sea can react. Tianling Mountain also has reinforcements, which should be led by Tian Shan Jr. This time, our sect has gathered 2 great adepts, 5 mid-Dharma adepts, and several early Dharma adepts on Scarlet Mist Island. This time, our sect has gathered 2 great adepts, 5 mid-Dharma adepts, and several early Dharma adepts. This should be enough to intimidate the sects of the North Sea after the Fire Phoenix tribe leaves. Lu Ping nodded and said, That should be enough. We still have a ship, but the news of my injuries must be kept a secret. Also, we can forget about taking over the territory on the outskirts of Scarlet Mist Island this time. If the sects of the North Sea unite against us, we can even take a step back, but we must concentrate our forces to take over the central area. The real treasures of Scarlet Mist Island are all in the central area. This time, we'll need Uncle Master, Tianqin, and Tiancheng to take action personally. This is the best time to take over the treasures. Jiang Tianlin pondered for a moment and said, I'll try my best, but the central area is full of dangers and the environment is dangerous. Although Tianqin, Tiancheng, and I can go in and out without any problems, it'll be extremely difficult for the disciples of the sect to guard it. Lu Ping coughed twice and forced a smile. That won't happen. The environment of Scarlet Mist Island is dangerous, but it's formed by the fire veins that cover the entire island. Now that Yan Zhuxiao has sunk a second tribulation spirit treasure into the main fire vein of Scarlet Mist Island, the danger level of the remaining scattered fire veins will naturally be greatly reduced without the support of the main vein. However, the fire attribute cultivation resources in the central area of Scarlet Mist Island will not decrease, especially since many fire veins have been nurtured for thousands of years. There should be a lot of spirit fire and mystical fire seeds inside. This is the best time to seize them. Hearing this, Jiang Tianlin immediately relaxed. However, he immediately began to think about the cultivation resources in the central area of Scarlet Mist Island. The fire attribute cultivation world inside Scarlet Mist Island had always been coveted by the various sects, but they couldn't develop it due to the dangerous environment inside. Now that the scattered fire veins on Scarlet Mist Island had been contained, Jinling naturally had to seize it before the other sects did. At this time, Mei Tianqin opened her mouth and asked about the Burning Hell Formation. Marshal Nephew Lu, how is the situation inside the Burning Hell Formation? If we can break it, not to mention Yan Zhuxiao's second tribulation spirit treasure, just the main fire vein's value is probably not any less than a giant spirit vein. Mei Tianqin's own attainments in fire were quite profound, and she was the current manager of the Pill Pavilion, so she naturally knew the importance of a large fire vein to Jinling. Not to mention anything else, after Jinling had drawn the medium fire vein that caused Scarlet Mist Island to rise from the bottom of the sea to Tianling Mountain, it had played an extremely important role in the development of the Pill Pavilion and shortening the time needed to repair the treasured ship. Lu Ping laughed bitterly and said, How could Disciple not know? It's just that the formation has already been formed, and Yan Zhuxiao is dead. If I want to break it, I can only enter the formation. Originally, Disciple might have been able to break it if I had waited for my injuries to heal before entering the formation. However, after I killed Yan Zhuxiao, the pure Yang avatar merged most of its essence into the formation's sea of fire while it was collapsing, causing the Burning Hell Formation to become even more powerful. Now, even if Disciple's injuries are completely healed, I won't be able to escape from this formation. Is that so? Mei Tianqin was clearly a little disappointed. Jiang Tianlin smiled at the side and said, Don't worry, since even junior nephew Lu isn't confident that he can freely enter and exit this Burning Hell Formation, others naturally won't be able to take away the treasures in the formation. Moreover, only our sect knows about the large fire vein. If we don't say anything, even if the other sects are suspicious, they will only lose manpower in vain if they enter. Mei Tianqin also smiled and said, You are too greedy. In that case, there's no time to lose, let's make our move as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, just as Mei Tianqin stood up, she heard Lu Ping say, Don't be anxious, junior uncle. Lu Ping swept his hand across the square table in front of him, and a row of 6 feathers of different sizes wrapped in a rainbow-colored light appeared on the table. Mei Tianqin and Jiang Tianlin glanced at each other, knowing that these were the treasures of the Luan Taoist that Lu Ping had obtained from the Heaven's Abode. Yan Zhuxiu died at Lu Ping's hands, so all of his treasures naturally fell into Lu Ping's hands. Unfortunately, according to Yan Jiuxiao, the Luan Taoist should have left behind 7 natal feathers, and the one that Tianqing Laozu snatched from a fire phoenix race cultivator was activated by Mei Tianqing. The fire phoenix race had obtained 2 natal feathers, one of which was in Yan Jiuxiao's possession, while the other was in the hands of the pure Yang Laozu of the fire phoenix race. Therefore, there were only 6 natal feathers in Lu Ping's possession. Lu Ping handed the second feather from the left to Mei Tianqing and said, "Junior uncle, this is the feather you obtained earlier." The Luan Taoist should have 7 natal feathers, and one of them is in the hands of the pure Yang Laozu of the Eastern Sea Fire Phoenix race. Mei Tianqing accepted the feather and said with a smile, "Although this is a heaven-opening relic, and the intent contained within it seems to contain an extremely powerful technique, I still have no idea what it is." However, Lu Ping smiled and said to Jiang Tianlin, "Senior uncle, you should choose one as well." Jiang Tianlin was a little confused, but he still chose one of the 5 remaining feathers based on his intuition and said, "Junior nephew Lu, do you know a thing or two about this?" Lu Ping nodded and said seriously, "The 7 natal feathers left behind by the Luan Taoists not only contain the cultivation methods of 7 supreme divine abilities, but also the heaven-opening relic. These 7 feathers can only be sensed and inherited by cultivators with the Luan bloodline. Senior Uncle Tianqing and Senior Uncle are both cultivators with the Luan bloodline, so it is possible for you to inherit the heaven-opening relic. Unfortunately, our sect only has 6 of these feathers. The heaven-opening relic." Even Jiang Tianlin was shocked when he heard this news. In the cultivation world, only the 6 sacred lands Xiao Baiyu, Lu Ping, and other extremely powerful and lucky cultivators had the complete inheritance of the heaven-opening relic. The 2 of them didn't expect that they would also have the opportunity to inherit the heaven-opening relic. Seeing the excitement on their faces, Lu Ping had to say, "Although there is the inheritance of the heaven-opening relic inside, it is not certain that you will be able to obtain it. It is only a possibility. However, Junior Uncle Tianqing has already been recognized by that feather, and that intent will naturally guide you to the cultivation method of the heaven-opening relic. Whether Senior Uncle Jiang can obtain it or not will depend on your luck." Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, "It is good that there is this opportunity." Looking at the remaining 4 feathers on the table, Jiang Tianlin asked, "What do you plan to do with the remaining 4 feathers?" Lu Ping said, "These 6 feathers not only contain the inheritance of the Luan Taoist's heaven-opening relic, but more importantly, there are 6 heaven-opening relics sealed within them. Moreover, the heaven-opening relic was personally sealed by the Luan Taoist. Although I cannot inherit this inheritance, I can try to suppress the intent of the Luan Taoist so that I can activate the sealed heaven-opening relic at any time." Hearing this, Jiang Tianlin was shocked at first, but then he became overjoyed. He said, "In this way, our sect can be considered to have a true treasure to stabilize the sect's fate." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Yes, once the Luan Taoist uses the heaven-opening relic, no one in the world can be his match except for the 7th patriarch of the heaven-opening relic." Jiang Tianlin stared at the feather in his hand and said in a deep voice, "This item cannot be used unless the sect is in danger." Lu Ping agreed. "With this item, the sect's inheritance will not be destroyed." You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.